The little beast got hit, and it squealed in agony. It turned around and jumped towards Han. Senator Han Sen was very fast, and because his rabbit shoes were Duke class, he had Duke class speed to run with. The beast was only Earl class, so it was much slower than Han Sen. Han Sen moved like a shadow. He swung his ghost teeth knife and hit the little beast again. Every time he did this, a small wound was left on the creature. Over time, after many more strikes, those cuts were all over its body. The wounds kept bleeding as a purple mist oozed out of the injuries. It was only a matter of time before the wounds started to spread. The beast was injured, and being unable to withstand the pain, it sought to race back into Red Mist Valley to escape.
Han Sen felt depressed.
He had the speed, and he had a good knife to boot. Unfortunately, his powers were actually quite weak. The Viscount class godlight, with teeth knife, could not grievously injure the Earl class beast. He continued to slash at the beast as well as he could, but the foe was still able to escape into the valley. Little uncle, draw him out again. Han Sen retreated to a position where he could hide. Little uncle ran back to the entrance, but this time without the bike. The bike was too weak right now, so it was pointless bringing it before an earl. Where are you running off to, boy? Come out and fight Grandpa Wang again. Wang Yuhang kept barking into the mist, but the creature did not reveal itself again. Perhaps it was because the beast really was quite injured. Wang Yuhang shouted like that for a while, until his voice started to crack and leave him. Still, their foe refused to reveal itself again. Hey, is it working? If it doesn't work, we'll just have to find another way, Xie Qing King shouted at Wang Yuhang. Wang Yuhang acted confidently, and he said, "What do you mean? Is it working?"
No.
But I am a man, and I will not give up so easily. After that, Wang Yuhang turned his back to the entrance of the mist-veiled valley and pulled down his pants. He bent over to reveal his butt, and in a bid to provoke the enemies inside the mist, spread his cheeks. If you have the balls, you'd come out and fight with me. Otherwise, your kid is my kid. Squeak. After Wang Yuhang shouted, a red shadow appeared. It was the same beast, and it was still bleeding from the lacerations it had procured earlier. It ran out very angry, as if Wang Yuhang had just slaughtered its parents. Wang Yuhang started running and eventually resummoned his armor. Unfortunately, he was a little late in doing that, and he suffered a bite. He lost a big chunk of flesh from his backside, which bled profusely. Oh my God! Wang Yuhang kept running as fast as he could. Fortunately, he was able to re-equip the armor and avoid getting bitten again. But the blood from his bum dyed the armor red. The beast was still not keen on giving up, though, and it kept running after Wang Yuhang. Han Sen gripped his knife and ran out after it. With his speed, he caught up rapidly. The ghost teeth knife, with tusk, had created a nasty wound on the monster. The beast's recovery had been slow, as a result. The wounds it had incurred were still bleeding, and they were continuing to spread. The beast wanted to kill little uncle, but Han Sen hit it again. Now that it had regained its senses, it tried to reverse course back to the valley. Han Sen kept slashing it. He cast Jade Skin and the Blood Pulse Sutra, and he ran them both at maximum velocity. His body looked like jade, and his blood was boiling.
Young.
After 3 swings, Han Sen felt as if his own blood was going to spill out. A weird, blood-like power entered his ghost teeth knife and dyed it red. Mutant blood ascended to Viscount. The announcement rang inside Han Sen's mind, and it brought him sheer delight. The Blood Pulse Sutra had finally leveled up. Catcha! The now reddened ghost teeth knife was covered in a jade skin godlight. It came down on the beast and sliced its paws off. Han Sen felt very happy about this. The red blade he now wielded was flashing, and blood was being thrown about everywhere. Before the enemy could escape all the way into the mist, Han Sen was able to cut off its head. Red Mist Mink Xenogenic Earl hunted, Xenogenic gene found. Xenogenic beast soul obtained. Han Sen was happy. He picked up the beast and cut it open. He found a red bone inside its body, which he knew was the prized Xenogenic gene. Help! I'm going to die. Wang Yuhang was on the ground, screaming. His butt had been sorely injured. No one told you to be that reckless. Xie Qing King kicked Wang Yuhang's bleeding butt, which prompted another scream. You guys have no heart. I did this for you lot. Xie Qing King looked at the man with disdain and said, You had it coming. Little Silver, go heal him, Han Sen called to Little Silver.
No.
Arg. Before Wang Yuhang could finish, Little Silver fired 2 bolts of lightning at him, one from each eye. They struck Wang Yuhang's bum and had him squealing in even more pain. Little Silver's Viscount class healing was very effective. Its only downside was that it dished out a lot of pain. Wang Yuhang's wounds were completely healed after a short amount of time. Little uncle, try again. See if there are any more xenogenics inside.
Han Sen smiled at Wang Yuhang.
Wang Yuhang didn't want to, but he still shouted before the entrance of the valley. He wasn't taking his pants off this time, though. After a while, there appeared to be nothing more. Xie Qing King decided to sketch some shadows and send them into the valley, though. They soon disappeared, but not because they were attacked. It looks like there are no more xenogenics inside. Xie Qing King put his book away and approached the valley. They all entered that place, and as suspected, they weren't attacked. The red mist was too strong, though, and they couldn't make out anything. The mist is too strong. I can't see anything. I won't be able to see any sort of treasure. Assuming there is something here, Wang Yuhang said. They couldn't find anything there, so eventually, they abandoned the valley. There has to be something. It's just that finding it will be annoying. Xie Qing King frowned. Han Sen was going to say something, but suddenly, an aircraft came flying down towards Mirror Lake. It doesn't look like an aircraft that belongs to the rebate. Who would seek to visit this place now, of all times? Han Sen frowned and called for everyone to return. There weren't many electronic tools that could be used on Planet Eclipse. If they wanted to get some intel, they'd have to go back to base. Outside of Mirror Base, an aircraft came to park. When the door of the ship opened, it revealed a woman with white, monk-like robes. The woman was very beautiful, and she had a red on her forehead. She was a Buddha. Han Sen had seen many bald people, but very few women, and he definitely hadn't seen a bald woman that pretty before. Her delicate face and the grace she exuded made it easy to ignore the fact that she had no hair. She was different from Buddha King. This Buddha woman did not possess a scar, and she only had that red on her forehead. Behind the Buddha woman, a Buddha man came forward, and then a few of the rebate did too. My lady, Planet Eclipse is so poor. There is nothing to see here, and I can assure you that this is not a place you will enjoy visiting, a rebate man said to the woman. The Buddha lady, called Speechless, smiled and said, No Flower and I want to see Knife Queen student. We are here for the sole purpose of visiting this planet. No Flower Buddha quietly said, The crystallizer that is called Han Sen. He brought out a king-class knife from Knife Grave, did he not? And he managed to practice teeth knife techniques, yes? Are these claims true? Yes, but he is a mere baron. Because he is so weak, Knife Queen has squandered a great many resources on him. He is not even a viscount yet. I am afraid there is no point in you guys visiting, Sad Knight said. That's okay. We are merely sating our curiosity. We just want to observe what sort of creature he is. Speechless smiled. This way, then. Sad Knight led the way for them. When they stood before the entrance of the base, Sad Knight said to the guards, Tell your master Han Sen that Sad Knight, Black Cliff, Speechless Buddha Lady, and No Flower Buddha are here to visit. After that, Sad Knight performed a welcoming gesture to them. Then, he said, This way. After walking a few steps, a guard stopped him and said, This is our base. You cannot enter here. Move. Sad Knight looked at the guard coldly, then tried to force his way inside. The guard did not say a word, and instead pulled out a giant cleaver. The guard swung it at Sad Knight. How dare you attack me? You are a mere servant. Sad Knight was enraged by this, and so he threw a slap towards the cleaver to eliminate the guard. The Knight family did not have much respect for Han Senator in the Moon Festival. Han Sen had stolen the thunder away from the Knight family. It made Sad Knight very angry with him, and that was only fuel to the fire of his current rudeness. Sad Knight could tell that the guard was just a baron, though. Sad Knight was a viscount, so killing the guard should have been an easy feat. But when the cleaver was about to come into contact with his hand, the giant cleaver moved like a fish. It slid to the side of his wrist and cut it. It was a small cut, but it was enough to make Sad Knight extremely angry. Being injured by a baron was quite humiliating for him. He was the son of Night River King, and he had been dealt a speck of damage by a weakling guard. This was just too embarrassing for him. He started to glow with a godlight, preparing to use all his power to kill the guard. Unfortunately for him, he had found the wrong person. A normal baron might have been killed by 3 of his punches, but this guard was Lady Chef. Lady Chef was just a baron, but she had lived a very long life. Her fighting talents were like those of a grandmaster. The guy in front of her was nothing, by comparison. A light shot out of Sad Knight's palm, but Lady Chef's movements were like magic. He was unable to do anything to her. Speechless and No Flower were shocked. For a baron guard to fend off such an enemy with such ease was a big surprise. Amazing blade skills for sure. It looks like she has something of a knife mind. It is rare for a baron to possess something like that. No Flower thought this was very shocking. Sad Knight's face was swollen with rage. He was trying to kill a baron, and he had yet to have any success. He looked useless in front of the Buddha. What are you guys up to? A voice came from a short distance away. Everyone turned around to see 3 men, 1 woman, and 1 creature approaching. Han Sen was amongst them. Sad Knight coldly spoke to Han Sen. Han Sen, how much disobedience do you teach your slaves? They have stopped a few kings and Buddha. What's more, they are fighting me. I will teach them how to behave properly if you want.
Han Sen recognized him.
They last met in the Moon God's festival. Dragon Lady, what's all this about? Han Sen walked over to Dragon Lady. They tried to force their way inside. I stopped them, Dragon Lady answered. Good job. Han Sen patted her on the shoulder, then walked inside the base alongside Gu Qingcheng. Sad Knight was frozen, unsure of what to think about this. He shouted, Han Sen, did you hear me? I brought Speechless Buddha Lady and No Flower Buddha to see you. Do you not possess any manners whatsoever? Han Sen turned around, looked at him, and said, This is Planet Eclipse, not the palace of Night River King. Who gave you permission to come down here? I should ask Night River King if this is how his family has been taught to behave. Go back. I'll give you half an hour to leave. And you are only given that out of respect to Night River King. If you guys are still here when the time is up, I'll punish you all with my special sort of discipline. When Han Sen finished speaking those cold words, he vanished into his base. Everyone was so mad, and they didn't expect Han Sen to be so disrespectful. Sure, we only wanted to see the sort of rules you enforce. What do you think, Blackcliff? Sad Knight's face was green as he asked the black-eared man. Blackcliff nodded, agreeing with what he said. Sad Knight was not stupid, though. Speechless and No Flower were with them, and the rebate that had come along were all nobles. Blackcliff was Black Moon King's son. Han Sen couldn't do anything. Sad Knight knew there were no elites there, though. At the very most, they could only expect to find viscounts inside. Blackcliff could get rid of everyone inside if he chose to. Unfortunately, the law in Narrow Moon was strict, and Knife Queen made fights breaking out between the planets difficult. If Han Sen struck first, it wouldn't be their fault. They couldn't kill Han Sen in return, but they could sure teach him a lesson. If Mr. Han will not welcome us, we should go back, Speechless Lady said. She looked quite surprised. The student of Knife Queen was far more unique than she had expected. She was actually all the more curious about him now. Don't worry. Blackcliff and I will take care of this. We will wait here and keep an eye on what Han Sen is up to. Sad Knight coldly laughed. Hearing that, Speechless and No Flower looked at each other. They didn't say anything. They were curious about what Han Sen was planning to do, though. Dragon Lady followed Han Sen into the base. Wang Yuhang and Xie Qing King then took up positions on opposite sides of the gate. They were like 2 soldiers, just smiling at the intruders. Brother King, what is your least favorite meal? Wang Yuhang, standing at the side of the gate, suddenly decided to ask. I'm not sure. I like pretty much everything I'm able to eat. I even like all desserts, such as stinky tofu, Xie Qing King said. Brother King, you really do like to eat everything. But you know what? I know of something that you would not like to eat, Wang Yuhang said with sincerity. What? Xie Qing King rose to the question. A closed gate. Would you like to eat that? Wang Yuheng asked, laughing to himself. I don't want to eat that. I don't think anyone would like to. Xie Qing smiled. Maybe, maybe not. Some people might love to eat that, and they certainly enjoy it. They can't get enough of it. Wang Yuheng smiled, and he looked right at Sad Knight. What a rude slave. Sad Knight was angered by the jest. He drew his sword and sent a scary swordlight soaring towards Wang Yuheng's neck. He could not kill Han Sen, but he did not care about disposing of his slaves.
Young.
A silver shadow blocked Sad Knight's swordlight. It was a leopard, composed of silver light, from the looks of it. Sad Knight was not quite sure what it was, but he wasn't afraid. He swung his sword like lightning to do battle with the leopard. Sad Knight's sword skills were wonderful. It was to be expected. After all, he was the son of a king. His fighting techniques were top dog. After a dozen strikes, the silver leopard was slain. The creature vanished into thin air. If you keep talking crap, you'll end up just like that, Sad Knight said, staring right at Wang Yuheng. If you like to kill so much, would you like to do a few more? Xie Qing moved his fingers to scribble out a few more of those silver leopards. They quickly surrounded Sad Knight. It hadn't been difficult for Sad Knight to take out the silver leopard, but there were so many of them now. They were all viscounts, and they worked together smoothly to establish a proper formation. It'd be hard, that was for sure. Speechless and No Flower were shocked by this. The ability to draw beasts was very rare. Sad Knight killed one silver leopard, then found that Xie Qing had already drawn another to replace it. He kept spawning more and more. As soon as each one died, the numbers didn't reduce, and the fight looked as if it could go on forever. The leopards were able to get a few hits in every now and again, too. Although none of the wounds were grievous, it sullied his image. Come and help. Seeing Black Cliff and the others merely waiting and watching, Sad Knight suddenly felt fear. He couldn't keep fighting these leopards by himself. Just as the rebate looked ready to strike, Xie Qing closed the book and the leopards disappeared. He coldly said, just as I thought, a run-of-the-mill king's child. Just a bully. You. Sad Knight was so angry, but knew he could not compete. When he was flying solo, he hadn't been able to take out the leopards. If he was unable to take out the leopards, he'd be unable to take on Xie Qing. The rebate were curious about all this, though. They wondered where Han Sen might have found such a man. In a solo fight, Sad Knight would not be able to beat him. The drawing abilities were rare, too. They had never seen it before. You are a bully, too. If you have the guts to do it, fight him mano a mano. I guarantee you cannot fight Sad Knight solo. One of the rebate barons shouted to Xie Qing, referring to the fact that there were so many shadow leopards. You sure you want to engage me in a solo fight? Xie Qing looked at Sad Knight with a smile. He didn't even spare the baron a glance. So what, yeah? But do you dare to come at me? Sad Knight knew it sounded ridiculous as soon as he said it. He was not too happy about this situation. Are you sure? Don't go crying to Daddy when you get beaten up. Xie Qing smiled at him. I'm afraid you won't even be able to cry, Sad Knight said coldly. Then come on. It's been a long time since I last had the chance to throw my weight around. The creatures here are so strong, so it's hard to find someone weak enough to enjoy bullying. Now the opportunity to do just that has come. Xie Qing put his book away, and then the silver book became a set of armor to plate him. Then, he stretched his limbs. Sad Knight knew Xie Qing was mocking him. He looked murderous, and his sword was like the wind as it came to take a bite out of Xie Qing. He had a terrible thirst for bloodshed right now. He might not have been able to kill Han Sen, but he could most certainly kill a family member. Even though it would cause him trouble, this was something Night King River could sort out. As the swordlight flashed toward him, Xie Qing was still stretching his wrists and rolling his neck. Pang! Just as the swordlight was going to strike his nose, Xie Qing threw a punch. The silver light broke the swordlight. Xie Qing's strong body began to gleam with silver light. He was like a demon, and he began throwing punches towards Sad Knight. Alu. A raging bevy of fists was coming at Sad Knight like a furious storm. Sad Knight knew he wouldn't be able to fight back, so he blocked it with a sword. He was like a boat in the middle of the rain. The fists kept striking the sword, shaking it. A catch noise sounded. The sword shattered to pieces under the pressure of Xie Qing King's repeated attacks. The punches eventually landed on Sad Knight. Arg! Sad Knight was sent soaring through the air with a body that had been totally twisted by the punches. His armor had shattered, even. His gear had been completely destroyed. Everyone was shocked, and no one had expected that would be the end result. The son of a king had been beaten by a guardsman. He couldn't resist the flurry of attacks, and he was broken and sent flying. They found out that Xie Qing King was actually scarier when he put the book away. A few of the rebate were shocked. They wished to save Sad Knight, and only Black Cliff did not move. It looks like you guys love to fight in groups. Xie Qing King was wearing an evil smile. His silver armor returned to the shape of a book. So, he drew something inside and brought a new shadow to life. But this time, it wasn't a leopard that came out. It was Xie Qing King himself. Alu. The shadows of Xie Qing King all began punching the rebate. Not much later, the rebate noble heirs were beaten. Their armors had been broken, and their faces were all swollen. They fell to the ground, crying their eyes out. Speechless, No Flower, and Black Cliff were all in shock. It was unheard of for a nameless viscount to beat down so many nobles. Xie Qing King seemed terribly overpowered, and he was nothing more than a guard in Han Sen's roster. It was a scary thought. It looks like solo, or even in group fights, you guys are all weak. None of you can fight, Xie Qing King said simply, and then returned to the entrance. He returned to standing at his station like a proper guardsman, and he paid them no further attention. Sad Knight picked himself up off the ground. His face was completely swollen, stained with blood and dirt. His eyes were bloodshot. He wanted to go and hide. He wouldn't mind losing to Han Sen, but he and the other rebate had been beaten by an insignificant viscount. This wasn't just embarrassing to them. This was an embarrassment to their elders. Everyone would be laughing if news of these events ever spread. The worst thing about it, though, was that Speechless and No Flower had seen it all. Black Cliff, what do you think? Sad Knight looked at Black Cliff. Sad Knight was not going to continue fighting, as that would just lead to greater embarrassment. But Black Cliff was different. He was the oldest son of Black Moon King, and he was a duke. If he struck, it was unlikely anyone near Mirror Lake could withstand the blow. I am only here to see Han Sen's knife blank. The rest of this is none of my business, Black Cliff said with disinterest. Sad Knight's face went red. He looked at Black Cliff, then left. He was way too embarrassed to stay now. A few more of the nobles drifted away, and then the rest got up and said goodbye to Speechless and No Flower. Speechless and No Flower didn't want to leave yet. They were happy to wait outside with Black Cliff. After half an hour, Han Sen exited the base. Han Sen looked at Black Cliff and the Buddhas. With a frown, he said, "Why are you still here? I am Black Cliff, from planet Black Moon. I have heard you are in possession of a mystic knife blank. I would like to borrow it." "The conditions are yours to decide," Black Cliff said, looking at Han Sen. "Are you related to Black Steel?" Han Sen asked. "Black Steel is my fourth brother," Black Cliff answered. "If you are a sibling of Black Steel, please come inside." Han Sen welcomed him inside. Black Cliff was willing to comply, and he let one of the Kate lead him forward. "What do you two need?" Han Sen looked at Speechless and No Flower. "Umitba, I am No Flower of the Buddha. This is Speechless Buddha lady. I have heard Knife Queen accepted a genius for a student, and so we have eagerly looked forward to meeting him."
No Flower bowed.
"Well, you guys have met him. You can go now." Han Sen turned around and walked back into the base. "Hang on, Pang." Before No Flower could speak, Han Sen had closed the gate. Speechless and No Flower had seen a lot in their time. They had seen many people express all sorts of different tempers, but Han Sen was unique amongst all they had seen. The student of Knife Queen is special. No Flower had a wry smile. "Never mind. If he doesn't want to see us, then we'd best depart." Speechless looked strange as she made the decision. "That is the only way, I suppose." No Flower nodded. They left the base and flew off in the aircraft. Speechless was thinking to herself, Knife Queen wouldn't just accept any student. We haven't yet found out why she selected him, but seeing how strong his followers are, it might suggest he is hiding something. I need to force him to talk to me sometime. After Han Sen went back into the base, he went to the meeting room to discuss things with Black Cliff. "Why do you want to see my knife blank?" Han Sen asked. The knife blank was not an ordinary item. If Black Cliff hadn't been Black Steel's brother, Han Sen wouldn't have let him in, regardless of his rank. He certainly wouldn't let him see the knife blank. Black Cliff said, "The Black family forges weaponry, and I am quite skilled at the process. I have been doing this for 50 years, but even now, I have yet to be able to forge a king-class knife. And that's all because I've never been able to get my hands on decent materials. Only fine materials can make what I seek to create. I have heard the knife blank you found inside Knifegrave is a good item. So, I was hoping I might borrow it. And if not, I hoped I could make an offer to purchase it outright. I wasn't planning on selling it. And you do know that because it came from Knifegrave, it cannot actually be forged?"
Han Sen sighed.
"The weaponry from Knifegrave can be forged. You just have to know how. It's okay if you do not wish to sell the material, but if it does work, I can forge it into something of your choosing, all for free. I'd even be willing to pay. You will still keep ownership of the knife, too." Black Cliff looked excited. Han Sen thought that was a worthy bargain. The knife blank was only a knife blank. He couldn't utilize its powers, so it would be great if it could be forged. It'd be free, and it'd also come from the best blacksmith of the rebate. That was a very good deal. Han Sen did not need to worry about Black Cliff destroying the weapon. This was Narrow Moon, and he wouldn't do something like that unless he was genuinely crazy. And Black Cliff did not look like a crazy man, so Han Sen was not worried. "Okay, please wait here." Han Sen asked someone to bring the knife blank. But just as he was about to hand it over, he felt that something was wrong. When Black Cliff saw the knife blank, he froze. It looked as if his eyes were on fire. The fire did not really exist, but Han Sen could see it. It looked very familiar.
King Junior.
Han Sen immediately recalled where he had seen this before. The gold sunbird that Han Sen had killed, and the being called King June that named himself Sky God, and the fire he used. What Han Sen saw in Black Cliff's eyes reminded him of all that. Han Sen was going to hand the knife blank over, but right before he did, he pulled it back. Knife blank. Knife blank. Black Cliff was acting as if he had been possessed. He mumbled over and over as he tried to grab the knife blank from Han Sen. F***CK. King June is behind this. Han Sen immediately reacted. Unless Black Cliff was stupid or just plain mad, he wouldn't have come here to try to steal the knife blank. Even if he stole it and killed Han Sen in the process, he couldn't have owned it. But that seemed to be exactly what Black Cliff was doing. The man's mind seemed to be scrambled, and it reminded Han Sen of King June's Sky God. Han Sen quickly fell back as Black Cliff roared. His body was on fire, and he leaped towards Han Sen like a beast. He was shouting, "Knife blank! My knife blank!" In that precise moment, the meeting room was blown up by the power unleashed by Black Cliff. His Duke powers were scary to witness. Many people heard the commotion and came rushing toward them. Han Sen shouted, "Please stay away. Run, as far as you were able to." Han Sen held onto the knife blank and also ran. The rabbit shoes were on his feet, and he headed out of the base. Black Cliff was like a hungry beast as he ravenously pursued Han Senator. He summoned a big black hammer and swung it forward. The fire was like a living thing as it tore a big hole in the ground. The nearby houses were being smashed to pieces. Luckily, the rabbit shoes made Han Sen just as fast as Black Cliff. Han Sen made it out of the base, but he hadn't gained enough of a lead to lose Black Cliff. Black Cliff ran like a lunatic. He kept trying to smack Han Sen with the hammer. He wanted to smash Han Sen into nothing but bits and take the knife blank for himself. King June, that asterisk shoal. He is so obscene. Han Sen knew that Black Cliff was not himself. The fire in his eyes was growing brighter, and he attacked without holding back. It was fortunate Han Sen had the rabbit shoes. Otherwise, he'd be mush right now. "Zero, contact Queen!" Han Sen shouted as he kept running. He was running towards the mountains, leading Black Cliff away from the base so he wouldn't inadvertently destroy it. Han Sen couldn't lose him, but he used his Dongxian movements to dodge each attack. He kept evading as he led the raging rebate towards the Red Mist Valley. Han Sen could not fight Black Cliff. He needed Ishida help, but God only knew how long it would take her to get here. So, He needed to find a way to buy himself some time. It'd be bad to suffer even a single strike. A random Duke class hit could be enough to break him to pieces. Han Sen guided Blackcliff towards the red mist, and in the meantime, Zero got in touch with Isha. Isha had the time to see her message. What? This has really happened? Blackcliff did this? After Isha heard Zero explain the matters at hand, she frowned. She could not believe he was willing to do such a thing. But it was Han Sen's subordinate that had contacted her, and she knew Zero wouldn't lie. Isha went quiet and quickly left for Planet Eclipse. She was soon at the base. Where are Blackcliff and Han Sen? Isha asked with a frown. Master was getting chased. He was leading the enemy off that way. Zero pointed to Red Mist Valley. Isha did not delay. Like an act of teleportation, she instantly disappeared. Isha was in a major rush right now. If what Zero had told her was true, then there was a Duke chasing after Han's senator. It was difficult to gauge how long Han Sen might last in such a pursuit. He could have been whacked into jelly by now, already. Isha scanned the valley ahead, and what she saw shocked her. Han Sen was sitting on a rock outside the valley, singing. Where is Blackcliff? Isha asked as she ran up to Han Sen. In that valley, Han Sen said, as he pointed down into it. Han Sen had drawn Blackcliff into the valley, and his pursuer had gotten lost in there. Han Sen was able to get back out and wait for Isha's arrival. Blackcliff was still down there. Isha looked into the valley with much confusion. Her face changed and she said, A red mist spring? Do you know what it is? Han Sen asked Isha. Isha looked at the red mist plaguing the valley and said, It is a red mist spring. I don't know if it is good for you or bad for you, though. What is a red mist spring? Han Sen felt a chill hearing this, but he asked her for more info. They had been in the valley searching for quite some time. Last time they were there didn't seem to be anything useful inside. They couldn't find what was causing the mist either. Even if there was a treasure, it seemed unlikely they could find it. Now hearing Isha say this, it sounded as if it might not have been treasure that was inside there. It might have actually been something harmful. Just as Isha was about to answer, Blackcliff came out of the clouds with a big hammer. After seeing Han Sen, he roared and swung towards him. Isha frowned. She could tell something was wrong with him, and she knew he wouldn't behave like that in front of her. She waved her hand, and a purple mist came out. It cracked Blackcliff's big hammer in an instant. Blackcliff coughed up some blood. The hammer was his Geno armament, and as soon as Isha broke it, harm was delivered to his body. But even so, he still wanted to go after Han Sen and Han Sen alone. He was acting like a man possessed. Isha then hit Blackcliff himself with the purple mist. She didn't want to kill him, though. All she wanted to do was knock him out. We cannot let others learn about this spring. I will discuss this with you when I return. Isha told Han Sen that, then picked up the unconscious Blackcliff. After that, she warped away. Han Sen went back to the base. After what happened with Blackcliff, he knew he'd have to be more careful. King Jun was able to use Blackcliff to come after him, so it was clear he could assume the form of other people to get to Han Sen. Having an association with a god is a bad thing indeed. They are so powerful, but they won't kill directly. Why is that? Maybe if I find out why, I can kill King Jun? Han Sen retreated into thought. When it was nighttime, Han Sen sought rest. When he turned around, he saw Isha standing right there. She had been behind him, and her sudden presence there scared him. Queen, when did you get here?
Han Sen blinkade.
Isha smiled and said, I just wanted to take a look at you. I almost don't recognize you. Why? Why would you not recognize your student?
Han Sen smilade.
Under the threat of Blackcliff's pursuit, you managed to run so far and so fast without sustaining any damage. I don't even think a Marquise could do such a thing. Isha squinted her eyes as she spoke. You know, I have shoes that can give me speed. I'm weak in other talents, so I guess I'm just good when it comes to being speedy. These take me up to around Duke class, I think. Han Sen said that, and then used his rabbit shoes to walk 3 meters. That is a good item. It gives barons the speed of a Duke. That is very rare. It is better than your holy item, even. Isha looked at the rabbit shoes as she spoke. Han Sen felt strange, all of a sudden. He was afraid Isha might want to try them on. They were a beast soul, and Isha couldn't use them because she was not from the sanctuaries. Fortunately, she was not interested in the rabbit shoes. She thought of something else and said, "Do you know what the red mist spring is?" "I don't know," Han Sen said quietly. Isha sighed and said, "I don't know if the red mist spring is a good thing or a bad thing, but for you, it might be an opportunity. It's possible that this spring could make your spell Geno armament level up. It could become a Viscount. That means the red mist spring can level things up?" Han Sen was happy to hear this. His spell Geno armament had been difficult to develop. It required an external sort of power for that to occur. If he tried to level it through solo practice, it'd be a slow process. It'd probably take him 100 years to get it up to Viscount class through training alone. That wasn't about Han Sen performing poorly, though. It was because the story of genes was not for humans. It was extremely unlikely that Han Sen had been able to practice it in the first place. It'd be better if it was simply a treasure, Isha sighed and said. There is only one way to generate a red mist spring. It has only been created because many creatures have died in this area and remained buried here for billions of years. Changes have occurred beneath the ground, which resulted in the generation of this new substance. The red mist is a sign that the substance has finished formulating and that it is now available. Han Sen waited for a bit, hoping she continues speaking. This is a substance that comes from the corpses of xenogenics. Nobles have no use for it, but it is great for ordinary types. Average creatures who touch it can become xenogenic. If a xenogenic ate this substance, they'd evolve quickly. Isha went on to say, "But your Geno armament is special, and I think there is a way in which spell can absorb it. We can speed up your growth by doing this. If there is enough of the substance, we can level her up to Viscount. What do I do?"
Han Sen asked.
It was too difficult to level up spell, and if there was a chance to cut comers here, he didn't want to let it escape him. "I have a Geno art I believe you should practice. When the red mist spring comes out, you use that skill and transfer the power obtained into spell. If you do that, she will level up. But this Geno art is very difficult to learn, and transferring the spring's power will be painful. It's entirely up to you if this is what you want," Isha said. She would provide him as much information as she could, but the decision was ultimately up to him. "Thanks, Queen." Han Sen accepted the papers she offered him and looked over the Geno art that was called Yin-Yang Change. "Don't forget to go to the event I told you about," Isha told Han Sen before she left. Han Sen confirmed he'd go, despite his total lack of enthusiasm in it. He began practicing Yin-Yang Change right away, though. Han Sen gave it a read-through, and he was immediately taken by surprise. Yin-Yang Change was just like Yin-Yang Blast. It had simply been developed in a different direction. Yin-Yang Blast's focus was on exchanging power that came against it, in which a power's direction would be reversed. Yin-Yang Change was based on making a power stronger. With Yin-Yang Blast as a base, he could easily learn how to take advantage of Yin-Yang Change. He would only need a bit of practice before using it. He didn't know how Isha had dealt with Blackcliff. She didn't mention anything about the man, so he didn't ask. But Isha hadn't killed Blackcliff. He knew that. He thought she might have simply sent him back to Black Moon King. Isha thought the red mist spring would make itself apparent in around 40 days. So, Han Sen had plenty of time to practice. Wang Yuhang went to Han Sen's room, smiling. "Han Sen, there is a rebate woman looking for you." "Rebate woman? I don't know any rebate women."
Han Sen fråvned.
"Still pretending? She says you were her teacher, and you two used to be close. You even taught her knife skills." Wang Yuhang was still smiling. "No, I never taught any rebate women. There is a rebate woman that teaches me, however." Han Sen was depressed, unable to think who he might have been talking about. "What rebate woman has been teaching you?" Wang Yuhang looked at him with a disgustingly creepy face. "Knife Queen. Who else?" Han Sen said, then left. He didn't know who Wang Yuhang was talking about, so he went to take a look. He went to a meeting room, and there he found a 15-year-old rebate woman. She had white rabbit ears and a face that was quite chubby. She had big eyes, and she was really cute. Seeing her there, it was tempting to reach out and squeeze her cheeks. Looking at the rebate girl made Han Sen think of Wang Mingming. They were not of the same race, but they sure looked similar. "I don't believe I know you," Han Sen said, while looking at the lady. "Master, Please allow me to follow and obey you. The girl immediately kneeled in front of Han Sen and bowed via the rebate's typical gesture. What is this? Who are you? Han Sen looked at the lady. My name is Qingli. I am Flower King's daughter. I really admire Knife Queen, and I wanted to become her student. She, however, did not accept me. So, I will have to ask you to become my teacher in her stead. That way, I can sort of be Queen's student. Qingli looked rather smug. I haven't made plans to accept any students, Han Sen said. He was so busy these days that he really didn't have the time to accept students. Qingli was Flower King's daughter. Flower King was at the same level as Isha. If Qingli became Han Sen's student, it would suggest that Flower King was of lower stature than Isha. If Han Sen actually accepted her, it was highly unlikely that Flower King would agree to it. It is too late. I am already following you. From now on, you are my teacher. Queen will become my elder teacher. Qingli looked quite excited. You are Qingli, right? Han Sen was not mad, and he actually smiled at her. Yes, and you are my teacher, right? You can call me Little Li. Qingli sounded rather sweet. Qingli, I'm not refusing to be your teacher, but if you want to be my student, you are going to have to pass my tests first. Forcing me to become your teacher is useless, Han Sen said. What kind of tests do you want me to perform? Qingli asked. Why do you want to follow Queen so much? Han Sen asked. It is because Queen is great and her knife skills are the best. She practices the strongest teeth knife of the rebate. I really want to be like her, so that is why I want to obey her, Qingli said in explanation. So, you simply want to learn teeth knife?
Han Sen smiled.
I guess, but I want to learn it straight from Queen. I don't care if others teach me, Qingli said seriously. How about we do a test and see if you possess the adequate talent to learn it? If you do, I can accept you as my student. Then, you will become Queen's student, Han Sen said. Really? Then test me. How do we do the test?
Qingli suundaksita.
I will write a few words for you, and then you can go practice them. If you can write them down exactly the same, I will take you as my student. Han Sen said that, and then brought out a wooden board. He used his fingers to write down a few words, and then gave her the board. Skymine like knife. What does that mean? Qingli held the wood board and wrote down the 4 words. She looked at Han Sen with a modicum of confusion. She knew the 4 words, but she did not understand the meaning of their combination. Go home and look it over. When you understand it, you can write it. And when you can write it, I will take you as a student.
Han Sen smiled.
As long as I am able to write out those 4 words, you can accept me as a student? That simply? Qingli did not believe Han's senator copying out 4 words to pass a test was far too easy. Yes, it is that simple. Now, go and practice. But I have a rule for you to follow, and that is, you cannot ask for the aid of others. You have to write this out by yourself. If you get help to do this, then you forfeit.
Han Sen smiled.
Those 4 words were simple, but copying them was not easy. The words Han Sen wrote contained the teeth knife mind. The words could be copied, yes, but the feelings they elicited could not. He gave Qingli this task because he wanted her to give up in her pursuit. That being said, if she did understand the meaning behind the text and could copy it as she had been instructed, then she'd be something of a genius. No one would mind taking on such a student if that was the case. Okay, you said that. No regrets now. Qingli was too young, and Han Sen thought she was too naive. She didn't understand the real task that she had been given. I won't have any.
Han Sen smiled.
Qingli left for home quite merrily with the wooden board. She planned to write down 4 beautiful words for Han Sen, so he'd have no choice but to accept her as a student. When she was back home, she could not wait to start practicing. Rebate generally took their education seriously, but Qingli was an exception to that rule. She studied, but she didn't focus on it too much. She'd finish any homework she was given, but she wouldn't go the extra mile with practice. It was fortunate that Flower King was good at teaching and that he had forced her to practice some writing. Qingli's writing was not the best, but it wasn't too bad either. If this was just writing, Qingli had a chance. But when Qingli started to write out the words Han Sen had given to her, she felt rather strange. And that was because she was unable to write them out like he had. When she started, She thought they looked similar, but the further she went, the more she realized they drifted apart. Weird. Why is this happening? Qingli held up the wooden boards to investigate. It was then that she realized the words were changing. They weren't exactly changing, though. It was because the markings on the board were getting deeper, and the words elicited the feeling of them changing. It was as if the text could move. Teeth powers. Qingli immediately realized that the words Han Sen had written out contained the power of teeth. Teeth powers were breaking the wood. That was what was happening. But no matter what, this would not scare Qingli away. It actually flared her curiosity and her urge to go on. She swore to her God that she'd write it all out, if it was the last thing she did. This time, Qingli tried her hardest. She kept trying to write down Han Sen's words and practicing the knife skills at the same time. As the daughter of Flower King, many teachers would be willing to teach her if she was willing to learn writing and knife skills. Plus, Flower King had a wide collection of writing techniques, and she was a naturally smart woman. So, it should not have been too difficult. It was hard to learn writing in such a short time, but the added pressure made her focus more. The more she watched Han Sen's words, the more fascinating she found them. It wasn't because of how well they were written, though. It was because the knife mind was so strong. As Qingli looked into the writings and the knife skills, she realized that the forewords were really unpredictable. The more she wrote, the less she found herself following. She was starting to think she couldn't practice it at all. But, after 10 days, the wooden board cracked. The knife mind and the teeth powers broke the boards. And then, the forewords disappeared. Qingli was shocked. She understood that this was the time limit given to her by Han Senator. She felt depressed. She had failed to copy them down, and on top of that, they were now broken. She had failed the test. Qingli, why have you been hiding yourself away at home for so many days? The event is going to start. A woman's voice sounded from the outside, and then she pushed the door open. The person who entered was a rebate woman the same age as Qingli. Her name was Du Lisha. She was Moonwheel King's daughter, and they were members of Moon Garden. They were also best friends. Qingli was an outgoing person, but she had been hiding away at home for 10 days, and she hadn't gone looking for her friends once. Du Lisha was curious about what was going on, and so, she came looking for her friend. The Buddha is already here. Why don't you come take a look? Why are you hiding at home?
Du lit cascade.
Ah, you were practicing writing? Did Uncle Flower force you to? Du Lisha saw writing all around the place. She picked up one and went on to say, the words aren't bad. You have definitely improved. Father did not force me. I wanted to practice this myself. Qingli shook her head. That is strange. You were practicing writing out of choice. That's not your style at all. What made you take this up? Du Lisha looked at Qingli with surprise. Qingli looked depressed and said, you know I admire the queen? Well, I want to be her student. But she said that I am not qualified enough to learn teeth knife, and so she did not accept me as a student. I know, but that was a long time ago. Is this still on your mind? Du Lisha said. Qingli shook her head. Queen is my idol, and that'll never change. So, I thought that if I could not have her as a teacher, I would become the student of her student. Then, that would make me her student. It can't be all that different, can it? The daughter of Flower King is becoming Han Sen's student? Even if you wanted to obey him, I doubt he'd take you.
Du lit smiled.
He didn't reject me. He wanted me to write down 4 words. If I do them successfully, he'll take me as a student, Qingli said. So, you've been practicing how to write this the entire time? Du Lisha saw that all she had written were sky mind like knife. Yeah, I have been practicing for so long, and yet I still fail. Qingli felt depressed. How can it be so difficult? Let me see. Du Lisha was curious about this. Qingli shook her head. The text is gone. Gone? How can they be gone?
Du lit cascade curiously.
Qingli explained it, and then let her take a look at the broken wood chips. After Du Lisha heard what she was told, she had a look of disbelief. Really? How long has Han Sen been practicing teeth knife? You say he has a teeth knife mind and can use it to such a high level? I can't help but find that hard to believe. I wouldn't have believed it either if I hadn't seen it with my own 2 eyes. but I really did watch him write it down upon the boards. And then, I saw the wooden board get broken apart by the words he had scrawled. You have to believe me. Han Sen really is so strong. It's no wonder the queen picked him as a student. I am far inferior, Qingli said. Don't think too much about it all just yet. The event is going to start soon, so let's head over to the meeting. Dulisha hadn't seen the text herself, so she didn't think it was that incredible. She put it out of her mind and dragged Qingli with her to the event. The exchange event was hosted by one of the two races, and they alternated each time. This time it was the rebate's turn to host. The Buddha Clear Sea King brought around 20 of his Buddhas here. Before the event started, they met with the nobles of the rebate. That way, the two groups would be familiar with each other during the event. Amongst all those Buddhas, there was one called Sunday. He had the highest rank out of them all. He was a Marquis class fellow. If this was down to raw talent, Speechless and No Flower were the absolute strongest. Buddhas had a special ability. When Buddhas became old, they could transfer their knowledge and experience to the younger ones. They called that ability Open the Mind. The Buddhas that used it would die a short time after, and the Buddhas that were on the receiving end would only be able to absorb as much knowledge as their prowess allowed them to. No Flower and Speechless had their minds opened. They had been very talented when they received their knowledge, so they were able to absorb a lot. They learned far more than the average Buddha did. Speechless was the best, though. The elder that opened their mind for her was a half-deified Buddha. Speechless was extremely talented, and people expected her to be the first fully-fledged deified Buddha in the last 30,000 years. But Open the Mind was classified, and most people did not know anything about this process. Even those who knew about the ability couldn't tell who had received a predecessor's knowledge. Qingli and Dulisha went to the meeting and met up with friends there. Someone introduced a Buddha to Qingli. The Buddhas and the rebate were allies, so there was a good atmosphere and relationship between them. But there was a competitive side to their cordialities, and they were fond of finding out who was stronger in various categories. This was an exchange event, but right now, it was more like a competitive display of skills than a swap meet. Han Sen was not at all interested in events such as this, but Isha had repeatedly asked Han Sen to attend. So, he had no real choice but to come. Wang Yuhang and Xie Qingqing were fond partygoers, and Gu Qingcheng was interested in learning about the Buddhas. So, they all decided to follow Han Sen. The four of them found a corner to sit down in, and there, they could watch the show and enjoy the food of the rebate. Because Han Sen was not a member of the Moon Garden, he could only sit outside to spectate. He could not enter or interact with the Buddhas. While this meant nothing to Han Sen, Speechless kept looking for him. When the meeting began, she had yet to see Han Sen around. She felt confused about his absence. Speechless thought Han Sen was the student of Knife Queen, and because of that, he would have been allowed to participate in the event. But Speechless looked around for him for a long time, with no hide nor hair of him to be found. She didn't ask about him, though. She'd feel weird to ask. Isn't Han Sen Queen's student? Why are you watching the event from the outside, like us? As Han Sen and his companions were munching away, he heard someone speak with a rather mocking tone of voice. Han Sen looked over and saw a few Xenogeniacs. They were not old, and neither were they rebate. The person who spoke was someone with the head of a cow. While they were some sort of bovine race, but they looked different from the cow. Han Sen did not know which race they belonged to, but he had seen this cow-headed person before. In the Moon God Festival, the cow-headed man was with Gold Jade King's son Gao Ji. He was one of the very few earls there. Han Sen looked at them but did not say a word. They were outsiders, and they were simply leaning on the rebate. I thought Queen would give her student special treatment, but he's just like us, an outsider, not allowed to be a member of the Moon Garden. He can't participate in the event, and he can only sit out here and watch. So what? Even if he could join, what could he hope to exchange? Maybe he can exchange a little luck, you know? The young man with the head of the cow and his fellows were talking so loud. It was obvious they wanted Han Sen to hear them.
Han Sen frov ned. Tog.
He wasn't sure what they meant. They were outsiders there, as well. They should have felt the same way about things as Han Sen himself did. He did not know why they'd bother picking on him, wanting to start trouble. So, Han Sen ignored them and pretended he did not hear them. He continued talking with Gu Qingqing and the others. The cow-headed man thought it was pointless to continue talking, after noticing that Han Sen wasn't paying them any mind. After a while, Clear Sea King and Moonwheel King arrived. They announced the start of the event. The guests have come from far and wide, so let them take the stage first. Moonwheel King smiled. Ba, let us hope we don't embarrass ourselves. Clear Sea King looked at No Flower, and then he went on to say, No Flower, you go first. Share your experience with your friends. Yes, my king. No Flower stood up and bowed before Clear Sea King and Moonwheel King. He walked on stage and spoke to the worker, saying, Please help me prepare a testing gold rock. A testing gold rock was a rock for testing one's power. While the rock could be dented, it was very durable, almost unbreakable. It was usually used for the testing of Geno arts. They have No Flower coming on stage. It looks like they are ready to show off, Dulisha said with a smile. The worker brought a testing gold rock on stage. Everyone looked at No Flower, wondering what Geno art he was going to perform. Although No Flower was bald, he looked poised and elegant. He bowed before them, and to the surprise of all the nobles who were present, he said, I am going to perform a Geno art called Touching Flower Finger. Touching Flower Finger was famous because it was very common amongst the Buddha. It was something each one of them could perform. This event had been created to show off new stuff. No Flower was going to perform something extremely common, and that was surprisingly disappointing to the attendants. No Flower Buddha, Touching Flower Finger is very powerful, but we have seen it many times before. There is no need to display this, is there? Someone said from below the stage, which prompted a number of agreements.
No Flower smiled.
He was not in a rush, and he said, The point of this event is to demonstrate new things. Yes, I am stupid and cannot create new skills. So, I had a little idea to modify Touching Flower Finger somewhat. If this can make you smile, that'll be enough for me. Seeing No Flower say this, folks became curious. Someone shouted, Then perform your Touching Flower Finger and let us see the difference. Ba. No Flower spoke out the Buddha phrase and walked in front of the testing gold rock. No one saw him do anything. They merely saw him raise his hand and press his thumb up against it. The people inside and outside craned their necks and leaned forward to see No Flower's Touching Flower Finger. But No Flower only pressed his thumb into the rock by a single inch. Even an ordinary baron could do something like that. Amidst their confusion, the audience suddenly noticed that finger marks were spreading all across the rock. A word was being painted onto it. It was then that the people realized that No Flower wanted to show something more than mere destruction. He was showing off that he could write with that skill. Still, they did not quite understand why. It did not matter how well you wrote. What did that have to do with showcase of power? Even barons could break the rock. You did not need tricks for that. No Flower kept on writing, and then his entire body changed. His body surged with strength, like a king standing firm against crazy winds. When he waved his finger, it felt as if flowers were falling, or as if dead leaves were falling. The flowers open and destroy it. No Flower was writing these words out. Touching Flower Finger was supposed to be a gentle Geno art, but as he used it, it felt as if people were amidst a rain of flowers. It made you feel so lonely and depressed. It was different from what the ordinary Touching Flower Finger would make you see. Some young men with weak wills became very pale. They felt as if they had become old men, or dying flowers on the verge of giving up the ghost. Even the members of Moon Garden looked bad. That is a strong mind. He is so young. How can he create such a thing? Dulisha looked ill as she spoke. Black Steel said coldly, The Buddhas can open their minds. No Flower must have received this from a king. If I guess correctly, this should be the device of Wilted Buddha King. Moonwheel King's eldest daughter, Rebecca, said, Not bad. Wilted Buddha King died 2 years ago. No Flower must have opened his mind before then. Wilted Buddha King was good at wilted skills. This Touching Flower Finger feels like something wilted. You must be right about where it came from. He has absorbed the experience of Wilted Buddha King in only 2 years. He is very strong indeed, Black Steel said. Rebecca nodded and did not say anything. She looked more serious than ever, though. Sister? Is he not cheating? He's got the will and experience from Wilted Buddha King, but we don't. Who can reach that level with such an age and rank?
Du lit cascade, Froning.
Clear Sea King put no flower on stage first for an obvious reason. Now, I don't think anyone can compete with him. It looks as if we will have to let them win this one, Rebecca said. No flower finished writing. Then he stood up and walked back. The lonely feeling disappeared from everyone once he was done. Inside and outside, everyone snapped out of their daze. They looked at the text on the testing gold rock, and what they saw was shocking. The wilted presence was spreading. That is a powerful finger skill. I have only seen a few kings who have a skill such as that. No flower Buddha is still so young, and it is rare to see someone like that do something like this. Why is it strange? Don't you know the Buddha can perform open the mind? The older ones can transfer their will and experience to ones of the younger generation. No flower's mind must have received such a transference from a Buddha king. That is how he has it. Mark my words. The open the mind skill is overpowered. It's like cheating. They are so young, and yet they are much stronger than us. Every race has an ace up their sleeve, allowing them to exceed in some way. The rebate have an advantage of their own. Don't give up faith. True, but I don't think anyone from our race can compete with no flower. Normal viscounts couldn't give out a feeling like that. Not even earls or marquises can do something like that. Well, they did travel a long way to get here. We should probably just let them win. All the nobles were talking about how envious they were of the open the mind technique. No flower lowered his head and waited on stage. As this happened, a rebate needed to go up on stage and perform a Geno art of their own. This way, they could be compared. That was the general purpose of this entire event. But no flower Buddha's touching flower finger was far too impressive. There wasn't anyone else in Moon Garden that could come close to this. Whoever came next would be too weak, and it'd be an embarrassment for them to follow. Dulisha and the other second-generation rebate all looked at each other, with none making a move forward. They all sighed. They knew the rebate were weaker than the Buddhas at this level. Are those words really that good? I think Han Sen did better than him, Qingli said to herself, looked at the testing gold rock. Qingli, what are you talking about? Dulisha asked from her seat, next to Qingli. I think Han Sen wrote better than No Flower did, Qingli answered. When other members of Moon Garden heard this, they thought she meant something about his handwriting being prettier. One of the members scoffed, Qingli, no flower's touching flower finger is something that ascends mere prettiness. There's a meaning inside it that is far more important. The shape of the characters is secondary. Qingli answered this by saying, I was referring to the meaning. I think the meaning of the Buddha's text was lacking compared to Han Sen's. They all heard what she said, but no one believed her. That was, aside from Black Steel. Black Steel was the only one there who knew Han Sen possessed such a frightening knife mind. Rebecca looked at Qingli and said, Qingli, when did you see Han Sen write? And what did his words mean? It was a few days ago. The words he wrote meant teeth knife's knife mind, Qingli said. Rebecca shook her head. I don't think so. How long has he been practicing teeth knife? He is just a baron. He cannot generate any sort of significant knife mind. Even if he was able to, it couldn't be half as good as no flower's touching flower finger. That is something only one of the king class can generate. And Han Sen is no Buddha, either. How can you believe a baron has a knife mind like that? Your thought process is right, but I'm telling you, Han Sen's writing abilities are better than no flowers. Qingli was weak. She could only feel it instinctually, but she was still sure it was true. Han Sen and Gu Qingcheng were observing no flowers writing at the time. Gu Qingcheng was shocked, and she said, that monk is not bad. Gu Qingcheng actually meant exactly what she said. Rather than being amazing, no flower's talent was simply not bad. The creatures in the sanctuary were far weaker than those in the Geno universe, but that was just a factor of base strength. When it came to the actual workings of combat and the finesse of it all, those that had made it through the sanctuary were far superior to those in the Geno universe. Gu Qingcheng's sword skills were the best to be found in the sanctuary. Her sword mind was among the greatest there, too. Despite that, her raw power was weak in comparison to others found in the Geno universe. That being said, her knowledge of sword skills and sword minds exceeded what a king class in the Geno universe would know. Most beings from the sanctuary were this way, too. There were a few exceptions to that rule, like Wang Yuhang, though. He didn't really have all that much knowledge when it came to fighting, but even so, he was better than most viscounts and earls. Not bad? You sure sound cocky. If no flower is only not bad, then do you care to enlighten us as to what can be defined as good? Said the cow-headed man next to them. Gu Qingcheng did not want to talk to a cow, so she ignored him. Han Sen saw no flower and was shocked. When he had looked at Unlimited Sutra, he felt the Buddha's Geno art was quite strange. Since he had seen the raw text, he could understand why this was so weird. Buddha King and No Flower's powers were not the same, but Han Sen felt they were similar. It reminded him of a scary guy. Han Sen poked his head into his sea of soul. There was a tower in there, and it still had the word Destiny scrawled across it. He put his will inside Destiny's tower, and there, Han Sen saw Armored Man and Ancient Devil. They were still both incarcerated there. Since Ancient Devil had been locked up, Armored Man had been fixated on the concept of skinning him alive. But with them both locked up, he couldn't lay a finger on Ancient Devil. So, all he had done was shout at the spirit, all day, every day. Ancient Devil had been locked up for a long time, but he didn't pay too much attention to his cellmate. He meditated all day like a monk, not caring for the constant shouting in his ears. In the beginning, Han Sen had frequently watched Ancient Devil, but that man meditated like he had been frozen. He never moved an inch, and so Han Sen lost interest. Now that he could see No Flower's performance, he knew why it felt so strange to him. It was because the Buddha gave Han Sen the same feeling he got when he observed Ancient Devil. Does Ancient Devil have Buddha genes?
Han Sen Gu said.
Ancient Devil seemed to sense something, as well. He opened his eyes and looked right at Han Senator. After being imprisoned for so many years, his eyes were still sparkling with clarity. They hadn't gotten dusty. If you stared at him for a while, you'd feel as if his eyes were bottomless wells. Looking him in the eyes was like peering into an abyss. What would you like to know? Ancient Devil suddenly asked. Han Sen was shocked and thought to himself, this guy has been locked in Destiny's tower, and he could sense I was watching him. What a scary man. Han Sen did not plan on avoiding the question. He used his will to echo answers throughout the chambers of the tower. He said, Ancient Devil, do you know about the Buddha? Yes, Ancient Devil answered. Han Sen felt even weirder now, and that was because Ancient Devil had just leveled up to the Alliance when he was trapped inside the tower. There was no way he had ventured to the Geno universe before then and learned about the Buddha that way. What do you know about the Buddha? Han Sen asked. Ancient Devil smiled and said, I once summoned a god, and the god said he was a Buddha. This shocked Han Senator. If Ancient Devil had summoned a Buddha, that also meant that Azura had been the one to kill a Buddha. But Buddhas were in the Geno universe, and it couldn't have been possible for it to be summoned to the sanctuaries. It made no sense. The Buddha could most certainly not enter a sanctuary, especially since it was summoned to a sanctuary below the Alliance level. I am talking about the race, not the religion, Han Sen said, hoping he'd get a confirmation. Bald with 9 moles? Like scars? This is what you mean. Ancient Devil said simply. Now, Han Sen knew that Ancient Devil did indeed know of the existence of the Buddhas. Whether they were real or fake, Ancient Devil knew about them. How did you summon that god to the 4th god's sanctuary? Han Sen asked. You want to know? Give me back my freedom and I'll tell you everything. Ancient Devil seemed his usual self. He didn't exhibit any personality changes. You don't have what it takes to bargain with me, Han Sen coldly said. There is no need for this discussion to continue if my freedom is not up for debate. Ancient Devil closed his eyes and returned to that frozen state. Han Sen felt pretty bad. He had used death threats and torture techniques in the past, but using them on Ancient Devil was pointless. Even when the spirit was tortured, he would simply continue meditating. Ancient Devil must have had the strongest will there was. Not even kings of the Geno universe could compare to him. If no one can compete against No Flower, this round will be over, Moonwheel King said, as he stood up. He understood the thoughts of those from Moon Garden, though. He knew no one else from Moon Garden could compete with what they had just witnessed. So, he did not want to waste any further time. It'd only reflect poorly on the rebate and Moon Garden. Moonwheel King, I would like to suggest a friend that may be able to compete against No Flower. Du Lisha suddenly bowed before Moonwheel King. Lisha, what are you doing? Rebecca pulled her sister back, unsure what preposterous thing her sister was about the attempt. Lisha, which student are you recommending? Moonwheel King was shocked by this. Du Lisha was his daughter, but he couldn't imagine who she might be hoping to suggest. Who I recommend is not someone privileged to be a member of Moon Garden. It is the student of Knife Queen, however. It is Han Sen of Planet Eclipse.
Du Lich Smiled.
After that, Han Sen was frozen. Thus far, he had only been spectating. The rest of Narrow Moon was frozen, too. No one expected Du Lisha would request Han Sen like that. Qingli was taken aback, too. She pulled Du Lisha close and said, "What are you doing? Did you not say Han Sen's words were far better than No Flowers? If that is true, then I recommend he be the one to compete against No Flower. If he wins, he will only make the rebate look better," Du Lisha said. "That's just what I thought. I don't know for a fact that Han Sen really is better," Qingli said quickly. Du Lisha wore a mystic smile and said, "It does not matter. Even if he does lose, he is not one of the rebate, and he is not a member of Moon Garden. He can't embarrass us, even if he fails." Qingli did not know what to say to that. She stared at Du Lisha and said, "If he loses, it will embarrass Knife Queen. That'd be even worse." Before Du Lisha could say something more, Moonwheel King frowned on stage and said, "Han Sen is not on the member list." Moonwheel King, I have heard about Knife Queen student. If we can truly compete and compare our techniques, I would relish the chance. No Flower bowed before Moonwheel King. When Speechless and No Flower returned from Planet Eclipse, they talked between each other about how they might get to know Han Sen more. The best way to do that was to force him on stage and challenge him to such a competition. Hearing Du Lisha suggest Han Sen, the eyes of Speechless and No Flower gleamed with radiance. They wouldn't let this opportunity slip away. Before Speechless herself agreed, No Flower was agreeing. Since No Flower agreed, though, Moonwheel King had no choice but to ask, "Is Han Sen even here?" "Yes, I am." Han Sen stood up and bowed before Moonwheel King. "Are you willing to compete against No Flower?" Moonwheel King asked.
I AM-Vilning 2, Han Sen ansvared.
And it shocked everyone around the stage. Even Isha, who was on Planet Blade, was flabbergasted to hear Han Sen agree to compete against No Flower. Han Sen thought that Isha had let him come so that he could prove himself. He thought this had already been prearranged, and that's why he accepted the challenge so quickly. So, he had already prepared to show off again and make Isha take him even more seriously as a student. He hoped she would be willing to spend even more resources on his development. Isha actually wanted Han Sen to earn her some extra reputation, but No Flower's touching flower finger was incredibly strong. It'd be difficult to find a king-class person to compete with that. So, she didn't expect this would be what Han Sen would agree to so soon. In that case, you can come on stage and compete against No Flower. Moonwheel King thought Du Lisha was trying to prank Han Sen, and that was why he asked Han Sen if he was willing to do it. It'd also give Han Sen the chance to avoid participation. But Han Sen was really willing to go on stage, and that shocked Moonwheel King. Han Sen walked toward the stage, then stepped up to the testing gold rock. "Ba, Mr. Han, we meet again. To be able to compete against you in the display of Geno Arts is a grand honor." No Flower nodded and said, "Are you being polite?" Han Sen asked, as he walked closer to the testing gold rock. He wasn't keen on talking too much with the Buddha. Speechless looked at Han Senator. She really wanted to see how Han Sen would choose to compete with No Flower. She didn't believe he could actually have a skill that exceeded what they had just witnessed, though. No matter what the case might be, this was a fine opportunity to observe Han Senator. Speechless watched intently, not wanting to miss out on a single detail. Many nobles of Narrow Moon were not happy with the concept of Han Sen actually going on stage. He is just a baron. He is actually going to compete with No Flower? Even if you used your asterisk test to think, you'd know that this won't end well. Yeah, he's not a member of Moon Garden. To hear him actually be recommended, why would Du Lisha invite him? Does she want to embarrass him? And why didn't Han Sen just say no when Moonwheel King asked him? It'd be better than being humiliated here. Yeah, I don't know what he is thinking. He is just a baron, After all, he actually thinks his skills can rival those of No Flower, which were learned from a Buddha king. He's just asking to get beaten. He is cocky. Far too cocky. He got a king-class knife and practiced teeth knife. But so what? His confidence grew way too quickly, and he is acting far too big for his britches. He is brave, but obviously stupid. This will be very embarrassing. Han Sen going up against No Flower is like a fake product being taste-tested in a face-off versus the real thing. If he can go up there, I can do it too. At least I'm a Viscount. Not even an Earl would be able to do much versus that. I felt the will earlier, and it was really crushing. Rebecca frowned and scolded Dulisha. This has gone too far. Although Han Sen is not a member of Moon Garden, he is now representing the rebate in this competition. It will be embarrassing for us if he loses. Dulisha shrugged and said, You can't blame this on me. He is the one who decided to come up here. He could have said no. It's not my fault that he insisted. Qingli thought about things for a moment, and then said, If Han Sen was willing to go, that also means he is confident about winning. Maybe he really does have a mind that was stronger than No Flowers.
Impossible.
Rebecca and Dulisha said at the same time. They did not believe Han Sen could beat No Flower. No Flower was so strong. It was like he was cheating. Dulisha recommended Han Sen just for fun, though. She didn't expect he'd win. It wasn't just Rebecca and Dulisha thinking this way, however. Most of the rebate didn't think he'd win, either. Not even Moonwheel King and Isha herself. Han Sen didn't trouble his mind with all this, though. He had a plan. He walked up to the testing gold rock and had a look at what No Flower had written. With his finger, he drew on the other side. Han Sen stood in front of the testing gold rock, and his mind moved quickly. No Flower's touching flower finger mind was not a king-class display, but to young nobles, it certainly seemed that strong. Teeth Knife's knife mind was stronger than No Flower's, but Han Sen could not use it. If he used all of his power, then he could definitely triumph. But Isha would become suspicious of him. Even if he didn't use Teeth Knife mind, Han Sen's own sword mind was not weak, either. He could easily defeat No Flower with that, too, but it was something Isha had already seen before. If Han Sen used it, he'd expose the fact he was dollar to her, and it was highly likely Isha wouldn't let him go after that. Fortunately, Han Sen had an alternate plan. Unlimited Sutra had a record of touching flower finger. Although Han Sen had not practiced it yet, he knew what sort of Geno art it was. Every Buddha knew touching flower finger, and that proved to him it wasn't a difficult Geno art to get to grips with. No Flower's version was so strong because he had been gifted the strength of Wilted's mind. Ancient Devil, it is just as you have said. Show me your power and be sincere about it. Han Sen placed his will inside Destiny's tower. He spoke to Ancient Devil. Ancient Devil smiled and said, As you wish. After that, Ancient Devil remained where he sat. He raised up his finger to draw. Ancient Devil was now using Buddha's touching flower finger. It was different from No Flower's touching flower finger, which had been altered with Wilted's mind. When Ancient Devil brought out his finger, it was like a Buddha touching a flower. Everything in the world was inside that finger. When Ancient Devil drew, Han Sen felt his heart connect to him. Han Sen could feel what he felt and see what he saw. Han Sen was in sync with Ancient Devil. He brought out his finger and pressed it against the testing gold rock. The movement of the two was perfectly synchronized. But Ancient Devil was drawing in the air as Han Sen's finger ran across the surface of the stone. Hey, it's touching flower finger. Han Sen is using touching flower finger? It looks that way, but why does he possess the Buddha's touching flower finger? Touching flower finger is not rare, and it is common amongst the Buddha. Many outsiders know how to use it too, so it's nothing too surprising. It surely is strange to see him want a copy and write it down too, immediately after. One flower, one leaf, one world. Han Sen did not pay heed to what others said about him. Boom! When the nobles saw what Han Sen had written, they fell into a stunned silence. Quickly, a cold sweat developed across all their bodies. They were so scared. It was like a curse had been laid upon them. They didn't move, and all they could do was solemnly stare at Han Sen's written word. There were no petals, falling like no flowers. and there was no threat of death or wilting either. Even so, everyone felt scared, witnessing what Han Sen had written. It zapped into the deepest recesses of their minds and latched onto them. Seeing those words was like watching a Buddha stroking flowers without talking. It was like he could see through everything. He was smiling as he went, but the smile was worse than the devil's. At least the devil would lure creatures to fall with him. But this Buddha went straight for the darker side of your heart. They couldn't hide anything. It was like their ugliest, filthiest, and evilest sides were being exposed for all to see. Facing death required courage. If they fought and failed, they could at least close their eyes and be at peace. But in front of that touching flower Buddha, they didn't have the strength to face it. They felt nasty. They felt as if they were muddied with sin. Arg! One of the young nobles, with a weak will, started screaming with his eyes closed. It was like he was running from something. The dukes and marquises were all pale. Night River King looked at Han Sen, and he too seemed very glum. Including Clear Sea Buddha, all the Buddhas were in utter shock. None of them could summon the strength to say a word. Blurg! A young noble pulled out his knife and drove it into his own heart. He couldn't withstand the pressure, and so he decided to kill himself. I didn't kill you. I didn't steal it. I didn't do it. More young people started to scream and run, erupting into a frenzy of madmen. They all kept on talking nonsense. Ba, Mr. Han, please stop. No flower has lost. Clear Sea Buddha said the Buddha catchphrase, and the young nobles woke up from the trance of that flower mind. They all looked pale, as if they had just awoken from the most horrible, lucid nightmare. Han Sen stopped moving his finger, and he pulled it back slowly. He had only written half of it. No one could face that fear. A Buddha truly touching the flower is pierced and reflected on people's minds, yielding only fear. One thought to be a Buddha, and one thought to be a demon. It is hard to understand that, and Mr. Han can practice touching flower finger to this level? The Buddhas can only be ashamed of themselves. Where did you learn this? Clear Sea Buddha looked at Han Sen with massive shock. He tried to ask as politely as he could, but he had trouble suppressing the shock. Many people practiced touching flower finger, but very few established a connection with its true meaning. No flower had associated it with wilting, but Han Sen had actually shown the real meaning right here. Ever since the Buddhas had created that technique, fewer than 5 people had ever achieved what had just been performed. Han Sen was a baron and not a Buddha, and yet he could practice touching flower finger to that extent. It was all so difficult to imagine. It is a simple finger art, and no flower explained it well enough. So, I guess I have just learned it. It didn't feel all too smooth, so I added a few modifications of my own. I apologize if I did not write it down well.
Han Sen smiled.
After Han Sen said that, the Buddha stared at him in silence. The nobles of Narrow Moon almost choked. So, he learned some. He modified it, and he says he did not write it down well. All the nobles felt as if their lives had been wasted. They did not know Geno arts could be practiced like that. Isha and Moonwheel King looked at Han Sen strangely. Clear Sea King looked shocked. After a while, he said the Buddha catchphrase again. Ba, Mr. Han is talented. He is very well suited for the Buddha arts. If you ever come and visit us, I will be eagerly waiting for Han Sen's Buddha talk. Clear Sea Buddha, saying something like that, put another shock upon the assembly of Narrow Moon. This is too much. Han Sen frowned. Ancient Devil's mind was stronger than he thought. Even the Buddha were shocked by it all. When Han Sen returned to his seat, everyone looked at him differently. Now, people were looking at him as if he was a monster. Han Sen was not in a good mood. He had only wanted to show off Ancient Devil's mind a little bit, but that display had obviously gone off the rails. He wondered what the kings of Narrow Moon might be thinking of him now. Isha in particular. Ancient Devil, why did you do that? Han Sen asked coldly, placing his will back inside Destiny's tower. I was just giving you what you wanted, Ancient Devil responded. He sat where he was, unmoving. He smiled like a Buddha touching flowers. Han Sen didn't say anything in response. He merely looked at Ancient Devil for a bit, then left the tower. Ancient Devil is way too dangerous. I can't risk letting him out, Han Sen thought to himself. What happened next in the gathering was suddenly much more boring. After no flower in Han Sen's performances, even though there were many talented Buddhas and rebates, the event was a slog. People weren't thinking much about the event anymore. People's minds were too preoccupied with Han Sen. An amazing mind, Qingli. You were right. Han Sen's mind is strong. I wonder how he managed to practice that.
Du lich looked strange.
Qingli did not know what to say. This was not the mind she had previously seen. What she had seen was teeth knife mind. But now, they were not going to believe that. So all she did was smile. It is a shame he has hair. Otherwise, I would believe him to be one of the Buddhas. He could most certainly be a king-class Buddha, or even a deified one. Rebecca kept looking over to where Han Sen was sitting. That Buddha sentence shocked the people of Moon Garden. It was hard to imagine that it had all come out of a barren. The event kept on chugging along, and when Speechless took the stage, she looked over to where Han Sen was sitting. She bowed and said, I hope I can compete so skillfully against Han Senator. Please teach me something. Being challenged by Speechless like that made everyone look at Han Sen again. They were all hoping that he'd accept. People in Narrow Moon knew Han Sen could use teeth powers. Han Sen shook his head. You are too polite. I have not practiced sword skills much. I am afraid I'd perform too poorly for you to see. Han Sen was too obvious earlier, and he wasn't keen on the prospect of performing again in front of everyone. That is okay. Skills are all connected. Knife Queen's teeth knife is so famous, and if you can use knife skills, I would be glad, Speechless said. Now that Speechless had said that, it would reflect poorly if Han Sen continued to decline. So Han Sen thought for a moment and then said, I am not very good at sword skills, and I don't like hitting women. How about this person next to me? Her sword skills are great. If you really want someone worth competing against, ask her to practice with you. Hearing that, Speechless frowned and looked upset. Han Sen, Speechless is a guest here. You cannot be so rude as to deny this, Moon Will King said. Okay, Han Sen answered, standing up. Speechless suddenly smiled and said, in that case, I will fight against her, and if she loses, you will compete with me. Is that correct? If you really are that desperate for this, then okay.
Han Sen nodded.
They were both Viscount class opponents, so Han Sen did not believe Gu Qingqing could lose. I am sorry to bother you, my lady. Speechless bowed to Gu Qingqing. Gu Qingqing rolled her eyes at Han Sen, got up, and walked to the stage. Narrow Moon and the Buddhas were curious. They did not know why Han Sen would let his subordinate practice against Speechless. Many people thought Han Sen was just a baron. He had a powerful will, but not powerful strength. Perhaps he did not want to embarrass himself, so he pushed a subordinate out to take the fall for him. But that did not make sense either. If she lost, he would have to go fight Speechless, anyway. As people guessed what Han Sen was trying to accomplish, the practice started. Speechless let a worker bring out the same Viscount sword. Then she said to Gu Qingqing, if you think this sword is poor, you may feel free to use your own. It's the same. Gu Qingqing picked up the offered sword. Speechless smiled and picked up the other. She said, please. Gu Qingqing pulled the sword back and swung it at Speechless. It was an ordinary technique to draw back the sword. But in her hands, it wasn't so simple. Gu Qingqing's sword skills were overbearing. The moment she held the sword, they were at one with each other. In Speechless' eyes, it suddenly felt as if her entire world had been taken by that sword. She could not dodge the quick strike, and all she could do was use her hand to fight against it. What a powerful sword mind! Speechless was shocked. She did not expect a subordinate of Han Sen could be such an effective swordsman. She never anticipated that the sword would come at her with such speed. Speechless gathered up her sword power and composed her sword mind to fight back. But Speechless was not very good at fighting in this manner. She wasn't called Speechless because she was mute, but because the Buddha that opened her eyes was called Speechless. She was grateful for that, and so she called herself Speechless. Speechless Buddha King was good at Speechless sword, but Speechless sword was silent. It was a sonic power skill that no one could hear. It was scary. The swords made no sound, and no one spoke. Many of Speechless Buddha's past enemies never knew what happened to them, or why they were killed. Their deaths had come faster than they could utter a word. Speechless sword was scary, but you could not fight it head to head. The two swords clashed against each other. But then, Gu Qingsheng returned her sword and walked off the stage. Catcha! Everyone saw Gu Qingsheng leave the stage, and as they did, the nobles wondered what had just occurred. And then, they heard a sound. Speechless, one sword had been broken in half. Her eyebrow was now home to a small cut. Blood dripped out from the laceration, and it looked like another red mole. Everyone was shocked. Speechless had been quickly defeated by Han Sen's subordinate. The whole event had been silent, as if the spectators had watched a battle of ghosts. Sword skills like that. Where do my sword skills stack up against that? 11. Everyone recalled what Han Sen had said, and their stomachs felt hollow. The exchange was supposed to be a stage for Moon Garden and its members, but Han Sen's Buddha riding and Gu Qingsheng's display of sword skills made the aforementioned members, and the Buddhas, look rather lame. Han Sen was on the tip of everyone's tongue now. People thought Gu Qingsheng was a family member of Han's senator, believing that it meant one member of his family could beat Speechless Buddha. Han Sen also had teeth knife and created a mind simply by watching a Buddha's performance. It was all so unbelievable. The whole of Narrow Moon was fascinated. The real elites did not believe Han Sen's words, though. They did not think he could learn as simply as he had claimed. Isha was one of these non-believers, too. As soon as the exchange ended, Han Sen was summoned to the palace. "Where did you learn touching flower finger?" Isha asked. "I found this book, and I learned touching flower finger from it." Han Sen gave Unlimited Sutra over to Isha. Han Sen had prepared an explanation when he borrowed Ancient Devil's mind. But Ancient Devil's mind had been too strong, and so Isha found it difficult to believe him. This must be the original version of Unlimited Sutra. It is a secret skill of the Buddha. Where did you get it from? Isha looked at the Unlimited Sutra text and seemed very surprised. "When I was young, I saved an injured man. He was an old fellow. I brought him home, and I healed him. He gave this to me before he left." Han Sen had prepared all the stuff he was going to tell her. "What did he look like? Can you confirm he was one of the Buddha?" Isha asked. "I was very young, so I didn't know what a Buddha was back then. Even so, I don't think he was. I'm fairly sure that the old man had hair." Han Sen described Ancient Devil's face to her, but with a few added years. Isha heard what he had to say, but she did not immediately respond. After a while of thought, she said, "You used this Unlimited Sutra to practice touching flower finger to such a high degree of skill?" "Yes," Han Sen forced himself to say. He was going to pretend he was a genius, so Isha might be willing to part with more resources. But Ancient Devil had deliberately overcast his mind and made Han Sen look ridiculous. He didn't know if Isha would believe him. Isha didn't believe him entirely, either. It was just the Unlimited Sutra, from what she could see. There didn't seem to be any extra guidance. Furthermore, Han Sen was just a commoner. No one should believe he could reach that level. "It looks like you are a genius," Isha said, while looking right at Han Sen. She could not completely trust what Han Sen said, but she was still happy about his performance. She didn't want to think about Han Sen possibly lying. "Thank you very much. I am a bit stupid, and others can learn many things. All I can learn is one thing at a time. I am afraid that is why I am so slow. I keep practicing, as I did with that, and that is how it happened," Han Sen said. Isha looked at Unlimited Sutra, and then looked at Han. "Good. In that case, keep being this stupid self of yours. If your stupid way can enable you to practice touching flower finger to such a high level, I am sure you can practice teeth knife mind just fine. Is 3 months enough for that, do you think?" "My queen, teeth knife is the ultimate knife skill. It is not all that easy to generate a knife mind. I am afraid I will only disappoint you again." Han Sen pretended to look bitter. On the inside, however, he was delighted. This was a two-birds-one-stone affair. With the title of a genius, he could use teeth knife mind without being required to hide his ability. Just this Unlimited Sutra can yield a mind like this? Right now, I will teach you. I will make you generate a knife mind. You don't need a deep mind for this, and you are already willing to say you cannot achieve this? Are you telling me that teeth knife is worse than Unlimited Sutra? Or are you simply saying that I am a poor teacher? Isha looked coldly at Han Sen as she spoke to him. "That is not what I meant. I will do what I can. I will not disappoint you." Han Sen quickly swore to God. "Good. This is the good student I know." Isha nodded. Isha did not actually believe what Han Sen was telling her, but she did not want to mistakenly place blame on him. So, she gave Han Sen a test. If Han Sen could generate a teeth knife mind in 3 months, it really would prove that he was a genius. And if that was true, she would go ahead and treat him even better. If Han Sen failed this, then Han Sen would have a problem. And if so, he would need to be investigated. She could not blindly spend resources on him. Han Sen knew her thought process on this matter, though, and he was really happy about it. Generating a teeth knife mind was not even a test. It was way too easy. What is that family member of yours called? Where did you take her from? Isha asked. My queen. Her name is Gu Qingqing. She is a member that comes from planet Crooked Rock, Han Sen said quickly. Not bad, but you should keep an eye on her. People with a sword mind like that are usually out for something else, Isha warned Han Sen. Isha knew many factions had sent spies to keep tabs on Han Senator. She thought Gu Qingqing might be one of them. It was because Gu Qingqing did not use all her powers against Speechless. Isha wouldn't feel this way if she had. Isha had much greater strength than Gu Qingqing, but Gu Qingqing's sword mind might rival Isha's. Speechless only received her mind from an old monster. Gu Qingqing was the real old monster. Yes, I will ensure that I am careful.
Han Sen nodded.
After he left Isha, Han Sen took a ship back to Planet Eclipse. He called Xiao, Lan Se, and stay up late. He invited them to Planet Eclipse, but Xiao and Lan Se thought things were fine with Seven Mirror. What's more, they had friends there now. And so, they made no plans to go to Planet Eclipse. Stay Up Late wanted to know more about the Geno universe, so he made plans to come. He was hoping to learn more news about the location of Little Flower and Nine Life Cat, too. He did not want to stay in the same place for too long. After talking with Xiao, Han Sen returned his mind to Destiny's Tower. There, he spoke with Ancient Devil. Ancient Devil was trapped in the tower, but he never assumed himself to be at a disadvantage. He spoke to Han Sen as if they were both equals. When Han Sen borrowed help from Ancient Devil, he told Ancient Devil that if cooperation went well, he'd be willing to give him a chance. Helping Han Sen with his mind was just a part of his show of sincerity. He had performed too well, though. Han Sen couldn't be sure if he had done it on purpose, but Han Sen believed that he had. Ancient Devil, you should cooperate properly. You shouldn't make stupid moves. Han Sen hadn't killed him because he knew too many secrets, and Han Sen wanted those secrets. All he could think about was finding a safe method for getting Ancient Devil to talk. Han Sen wanted those secrets too badly to get rid of Ancient Devil. In Narrow Moon's full moon meeting room, 6 kings had shown up for this meeting. Isha, Moonwheel King, Night River King, Flower King, Black Moon King, and Shadow King. Knife, do you really believe what he tells you? Despite being only a baron, he has managed to achieve a mind such as that with unlimited sutra? Seriously? Not even barons who go on to become deified elites are that strong, Night River King said. Black Moon King coughed and said, Night River, let's not impose limits that might not exist. This universe is so grand in its reaches that there could be anything out there. Han Sen really is talented. Just because you are unable to achieve such feats of might, don't presume others cannot either. Black Moon, don't talk such nonsense. Look at this universe. Are there any barons with that level of capability? Night River frowned. If everyone was able to do it, why else would we single out the exemplary and call them geniuses? Black Moon King asked slowly. Night River King started to respond, but Moonwheel King cut him off. Moonwheel King looked at Flower King and Shadow King and said, What do you two think? Flower King groaned and said, Han Sen's power seems unlikely, but we can't claim that there's a problem without knowing what it is. That hardly seems fair. Moonwheel King nodded. He looked at Shadow King, and Shadow King said, I would rather put an end to this before it gets out of hand.
Yes.
Night River King said immediately, Han Sen's history is far too strange, and he cannot be kept. Moonwheel King looked at Black Moon King, and Black Moon King said, Killing a genius like that makes no sense. It will just scare off the other races, and no other race will want to cooperate with us. Knife, you understand where we're coming from, yes? He is your student, so it is best that you decide what to do. Moonwheel King looked at Isha. Isha said calmly, I gave him a chance. If he passes the test, I can prove that he is fine. If he cannot pass the test, I will sever ties with him and search for any threat he might pose. If I find something, I will get rid of him. What is the test? If he really is a spy from some other race, he will have come prepared. He will pass the test. Night River King looked displeased. Oh? You think a barren spy will be able to create a teeth knife mind in 3 months? Isha's face was expressionless. Hearing Isha say this, the other kings stared at her with wide eyes. Generate a teeth knife mind in 3 months? Really? Moonwell King asked, stumbling slightly over the question. What is the problem? Isha responded, I have no problem with that. If he can accomplish that in 3 months, then I will believe he is a real genius, Night River King slowly said, as he sat down. It sounded like complete lunacy. It was silly to think of generating a teeth knife mind in 3 months. Across the history of the rebate, no one had managed anything like that. Night River King did not believe Han Sen could do it, as teeth knife was exclusive to the rebate. Even among the rebate, it was rare. The only person who had mastered the skill was Isha, and you couldn't cheat your way to learn it. The kings were mollified. If Han Sen could generate a teeth knife mind in 3 months, then practicing touching flower finger with such proficiency would make a lot more sense. If we can confirm Han Sen is legit, and he really is a true genius, should we give him a bit of a reputation? His identity should allow him to become a member of Moon Garden. He did make us proud in this event. After all, if we still don't let him in, the outsiders in Narrow Moon will become suspicious of us, Black Moon King said. If he can generate a teeth knife mind in 3 months, I would be willing to make him a teacher in the Moon Garden, Night River King said grimly. Black Moon King smiled at Night River King, then turned his gaze across the table. Moonwell King, what do you think? If he is legit, and he really is that talented, he should definitely be a member of Moon Garden, Moonwell King said. If everyone has no problem with this, then we shall all reconvene in 3 months. Isha stood up and left the full moon meeting room. Lu Xiaomei was walking down the street. The dark circles under her eyes were heavy, and she kept rubbing her head. Ever since Han Bauer had entered her school, she had begun to feel like she was drowning. She was a kindergarten teacher. Before Bauer, she had dealt with kids crying, not wanting to go to school and things like that. But now, going to work was like walking into hell itself. If her job hadn't paid well, she would have quit a long time ago to escape having to deal with the monster that resided there. I can't do it anymore. I am going to die. Today is supposed to be a holiday, and so I should treat myself with a day at the spa, and buy myself a nice gift. Ever since that little witch arrived, I looked 10 years older. Lu Xiaomei walked into a high-class female club. She swiped her card as she walked through the door. I really do need to treat myself better. I can just eat nutrient fluids for the month to make up for what I spend today. After she entered the place, the attendants served her with passion. She felt as if she had ascended in society, taking the place of royalty. This is my life. Finally, I don't have to worry about that monster. Lu Xiaomei wrapped a bathrobe around herself and lay down to wait for her masseuse. Miss Lu, a voice sounded in her ear. It made her muscles freeze. She jumped up and frantically looked around. She didn't see anyone there, so she felt relieved. She lay back down on the bed and said to herself, I am starting to hallucinate. Clearly, I am far too stressed out. Maybe I'll go shopping today too. That should help. After lying back down, Lu Xiaomei turned over, and there was a pretty little girl next to her, smiling. Miss Lu, what stores are you going to? Why are you here? Lu Xiaomei looked like she had just seen a ghost. She jumped up and pointed at the girl. I own this club. Did you not know that?
Bewa shukia hit.
Lu Xiaomei's eyes opened wide. You own this place? Yes. I have 31 branches of this establishment, all across the city. Bauer spoke with innocence. This B*teeth is showing off again. Lu Xiaomei felt both jealous and depressed. She was really hoping Bauer would disappear right now. But an evil expression crossed Bauer's face, and she said, By the way, I am going to the VIP area for a session. Would you like to come? Can I? Lu Xiaomei was quite shocked. It was a very expensive place, and she could only come here once a month. For half a month, She would have to eat nutrient fluid just to compensate for how much that place cost. The VIP area was a place you couldn't easily go to, even if you had a lot of money. She wanted to go, but non-VIPs weren't allowed. Of course, if you want. I can ask the manager to provide you with a VIP card.
Bauer smilet.
This is the life a woman should have. I've wasted my life. I should have gotten rich instead. Lu Xiaomei was as pretty as the next snobbish woman. She was reveling in the high-tier service, and she was almost in tears. Bauer called for a high-class massage, food, and drinks she had never tried before. She showed Lu Xiaomei what it felt like to be royalty. This little witch can actually be quite cute. It is only just a kid, after all. Perhaps the creature is innocent, at times, Lu Xiaomei thought. She observed Bauer as she sipped on a drink. Miss Lu, are you enjoying this service? Bauer was holding onto a bottle of juice as she sipped it with a straw. Yes, I love it. This place is great. Your family has very good taste. Lu Xiaomei had another sip of wine and felt so good. I am glad you like it. You can come whenever you like.
Bauer smilet.
Really? Lu Xiaomei's eyes looked bright. Of course. I have already prepared a VIP card for you.
Bauer klickte her fingers.
Quickly, a waitress rushed over with a plate. She walked in front of Lu Xiaomei and put down the dish. Politely, she told her, Miss Lu, this is your very own VIP card. Lu Xiaomei accepted the card, then saw a bill. The waitress said, and yes, this your bill for the day's services. A bill? Lu Xiaomei's face stiffened. When she looked at the bill, she almost fainted. She couldn't even pronounce the sum, but with all the numbers, she knew it was more than exorbitant. The muscles in Lu Xiaomei's face twitched. She looked to be in a far worse state than someone crying their eyes out. Bauer, you gave me all this. Wasn't this all a treat on you? Bauer's eyes opened wide, and she said with shock, I am just a kid. I don't have any money. I asked if this was what you wanted, and you said yes. You had me order all this.
D asterisk men.
This little thing must be doing all of this on purpose. Lu Xiaomei almost coughed up blood. Bauer's cute face had turned into a demon mask. I don't care. I didn't order all this. I am not paying. Lu Xiaomei jumped up. What are you saying? You're not paying? Bauer looked at Lu Xiaomei with shock. Lu Xiaomei wished to say there was nothing Bauer could do but pay it herself, when all of a sudden, 2 8-foot-tall women stepped into the room. They stood in front of her. Lu Xiaomei looked at their beefy arms and hastily took back her words. She replaced them by saying, I don't have enough money to afford this. That's okay. You are my teacher. So, why don't you sign this paper, and then we can make this bill all go away. Bauer smiled and pulled a contract out of her little bag. She put it in front of her teacher, as if this was all going according to a scheme she had already planned out.
D asterisk men.
She prepared for this. Lu Xiaomei was grinding her teeth as she looked down at the contract. It was a contract that required her to relinquish her very self. There were more than 100 unfair terms on the contract, and if she signed it, she would be wholly owned by Bauer. I am not signing this, even if you kill me, Lu Xiaomei said through gritted teeth.
Bauer smilet.
Miss Lu, what are you talking about? I have a decent club, and I won't hit you. But the stuff you have just enjoyed, the gambling you've done, even the look on your face when shopping, it has all been recorded. You like the teacher Mr. Luo, don't you? He's handsome and rich, yes? He is even chasing you, you know? I'm thinking I should show him all the footage and present him with your unpaid bill. The elegant image you have been clinging onto for so long will be gone with the wind. Think about that for a moment, and then reconsider whether or not you wish to sign this. Hellspawn. You are Hellspawn. The stuff you have is so expensive. A cup of wine costs 30,000. This is a scam. The luxuries you have been enjoying were all imported from other planets. They are the best of the best, and some of them were even Shura delicacies. Of course they are not cheap. If you'd like, you can check the prices on Skynet. If you happen to find that our prices are too high, we will certainly price match.
Bauer smilet.
Lu Xiaomei struggled a bit. She signed the contract because of the handsome Mr. Luo. Then she started to cry. Bauer patted her on the shoulder and said, Don't worry. Work for me for 50 years, and you'll have paid off your debt. The contract will also be erased at that point. It would have been better if Bauer hadn't said anything. Now the woman really wanted to cry. Lu Xiaomei began walking out of the club. Fortunately, Bauer had already arranged for an aircraft to come and pick her up. If she hadn't, she wouldn't have had the money to get home. Everything she had belonged to Bauer now. You've gone off course. You should go to the Eastern Lake, Lu Xiaomei said. I'm sorry, who's driving this aircraft again? The driver asked snarkily, looking at her through his sunglasses. Lu Xiaomei was furious. Yeah, you were just the driver. Let me out so I can walk home. Sure. The driver stopped the aircraft and landed. Lu Xiaomei got off the aircraft and kicked the door closed. She said, You are all bad people. This karma will come back to bite you one day. She turned and left. She eventually saw a familiar form walking nearby. It was her Prince Charming. It was Mr. Luo. After having bad luck for so long, finally, something good. My Prince Charming, here I come. Lu Xiaomei walked towards Luo Yushu. But just as she was about to greet him, she saw the woman with him. The woman was dressed sexily and holding his arm. She leaned close to him. Luo Yushu, who is this woman? Lu Xiaomei was so angry that she didn't even care about maintaining her image. She grabbed his arm and pointed at the woman. Luo Yushu was shocked. The woman then said, Luo Yushu, who is this woman? Luo Yushu's face changed, and he pushed Lu Xiaomei away. He explained to the woman, Honey, listen to me. She works in the kindergarten with me. She keeps hounding me for my love. Despite me constantly pushing her away, she has never stopped, and even now, she follows me around. Luo Yushu, what are you saying? Lu Xiaomei was so angry. He was the one who kept chasing her, and she couldn't believe what he was now saying. The woman looked at Lu Xiaomei, rolled her eyes, and said, You are just a teacher. And yet, you want to steal a man away from someone like me? Are you crazy? I can give this man pocket money, the likes of which you will never earn in your lifetime. Maybe when I grow tired of him, you'll get your chance. After that, the woman walked forward and pushed Lu Xiaomei back. She kept herself from falling, but she still dropped everything she was holding in her hands. Apologize to me, and then pick everything up. Lu Xiaomei was so angry, she wanted to throttle the woman. Are you crazy? Get lost. I told you I am not interested in you. Luo Yushu looked annoyed, and he also pushed her. He did not want her to hurt the woman he was currently with. When Luo Yushu pushed her, Lu Xiaomei fell back with nothing but anger and hopelessness. Suddenly, an arm grabbed her waist. It steadied her shoulders, then her body. She opened her eyes and realized it was the driver with sunglasses. She wished to say something, but the sky suddenly drew her attention. Many aircraft were suddenly headed towards them. In a minute, the vehicles had parked all around them, making the place very crowded. Many men, dressed in black with sunglasses, got out of their vehicles. They looked like gangsters as they gathered around. What are you people here for? What do you want? The woman and Luo Yushu began stepping back. Lu Xiaomei looked at the aircraft around them. King, Steel, Silver, Ghost, Starry, Star, Miracle. They were all special editions that not just anyone could buy. Having a single one of them meant you were one of the super rich elite. Now that there were so many of them there, the woman and Luo Yushu were frozen. The men looked intimidating in their black clothes and sunglasses. It made the couple's legs grow soft. The men dressed in black ignored the woman and Luo Yushu. They all walked in front of Lu Xiaomei and said, Second lady. Luo Yushu and the woman widened their eyes as if they had seen a ghost. They could barely stand on their feet. Lu Xiaomei was just as dazed, too. She had no clue what was going on. Second lady, Miss Bauer asked us to come and pick you up, the driver said to Lu Xiaomei. And then, he looked at the woman and Luo Yushu and said, Did these two bully you? I can kill them for you, if you'd like. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I will pick the stuff up. Please forgive me. The woman's legs were wobbling, and she raced to collect all the items Yu Xiaomei had dropped. She forced me, Xiaomei. I did this for our future together, Luo Yushu said. Go to hell. Lu Xiaomei grabbed her bag and smacked him in the face with it. He hit the deck, so she went ahead and kicked him in the nuts. He writhed and screamed in pain. The woman saw Lu Xiaomei looking back at her next. She slapped herself. But
But,
It's my fault. Please forgive me. Let's go. Lu Xiaomei gritted her teeth and no longer paid them heed. The driver opened the door to the aircraft, and there, Lu Xiaomei saw Bauer. She cried and went over to hold her, saying, "Bauer, don't cry." Bauer stroked her head and tried to comfort her. "Thank you, Bauer." Lu Xiaomei couldn't help but cry a little. She did her best to hold back her tears and look at the child with gratefulness. "You are welcome. I used 223 aircraft to help you. The fuel for each comes to a sum of around 78,000. With the wages for the drivers and the damage." Bauer fiddled with a calculator and whipped out another contract. "Hellspawn! You Hellspawn!" The aircraft echoed with Lu Xiaomei's screams. Han Sen planned to practice in the mountains. He didn't need to practice teeth knife, but there were too many spies occupying the base. If Han Sen stayed there without practicing, people might grow suspicious. So, Han Sen headed into the mountains to train. But instead of practicing teeth knife, as he had told everyone, he began to work on the Dongxian Sutra. His mutant blood and jade skin had reached Viscount class, but the Dongxian Sutra and the story of genes hadn't. The story of genes couldn't be leveled up through mere practice, so he could only focus on the Dongxian Sutra for now. Han Sen didn't take anyone with him this time. He planned to push himself hard in order to break through, which would make it dangerous to have others around him. Fortunately, there were many resources on planet Eclipse. Xie Qingqing and others could venture out and hunt xenogeneics on their own. The people he had brought over from the sanctuaries could eat xenogeneic genes and use beast souls, so they leveled up faster than the people in the Geno universe. Xenogeneic gene eaten. Iron Wolf, Viscount gene +1. Han Sen gobbled up some xenogeneic meat, and his Viscount xenogeneic gene tally increased. When one of his bodies became Viscount, he could increase that gene tally. Barren xenogeneic genes were currently useless for him. He had to eat Viscount materials exclusively now. Killing Viscount xenogeneics was an easy task for Han Sen, and his Viscount genes were increasing quickly. After 6 days of travel, Han Sen found himself more than 1,000 miles deep into the mountains. He met strong Marquise creatures, but he was able to run away with the rabbit shoes. Overall, the venture wasn't too dangerous. What is this? As Han Sen treaded along a path, he spied the presence of a strange mountain. The weather on planet Eclipse wasn't great. There was no grass growing, and so all the mountains were barren and rocky. The mountain in front of him was very green, though. Trees were growing all over it. There were flowers, and some of the plants even possessed fruit. There were birds and insects on this mountain. They were far away, but Han Sen could feel their life force. Planet Eclipse has a mountain like this? Han Sen thought it was weird. He examined the surrounding area and realized that it was the only mountain like this in the region.
Han Sen karefull I proasked IT.
There had to be a reason why it was so luscious. Perhaps there was a treasure or something. That thought prompted Han Sen to have a look around. Han Sen trekked to the mountain. While he noticed that there were a large collection of life forces coming from the mountain, he could tell that the birds and the trees were completely normal. There didn't seem to be any xenogeneics either. Weird. Xenogeneic plants are difficult to grow on this planet, and even xenogeneic creatures often have trouble surviving. And yet, how are these all alive? Especially since they seem so ordinary. Han Sen was quite curious about this anomaly. Han Sen kept walking up the mountain, and the foliage was just as lovely as it had appeared from a distance. Normal plants and creatures were spread out all across the mountain, as if the entire mountain had been transplanted to planet Eclipse. After an hour, Han Sen was able to reach the peak. He was quite shocked by the view he now saw, though. Atop the mountain, amidst a small grove of trees, there was an emerald field. A wooden house stood there, and it looked very old. Is anyone there? Han Sen called out to the occupied house. He thought it was a strange thing to find, and so he thought to himself, who could build a house in a place like this? Han Sen shouted again, but he received no response. So, he walked to the house because the windows were open. He wanted to take a look at what was inside from there. The decorations of the interior were simple and rustic. They were all comprised of wood, and the primary features were a table and bed. Even the teapot and the plates were made of wood. It looked as if the people there used wood to build everything. The wood was not big, though. You could see it all in one eye. There was a room at the back of the house, too, but you could not see it from outside. Is anyone in here?
Han Sen asked.
He received no response. So, he pushed open the door and it swung forward. A lock hadn't been fixed on it. Han Sen walked inside and poked around. There didn't seem to be anything worth examining, so he decided to check out the back room. Han Sen opened the door and froze. All of a sudden, he found a person standing next to the bed. They were facing Han Sen with their eyes open. "I am sorry. I called from the outside, and I believed this place was empty," Han Sen explained, but his words were met with awkward silence. Something was giving him pause. That was because the person next to the bed was a man. A human? The man stood where he was and did not move. He didn't even look at Han Sen. "Excuse me." Han Sen looked at the man and spoke carefully. He wanted to know what he was and why there might be a human there. But Han Sen did not know for sure that the man was a human. He could have been a crystallizer, forgotten long ago. Han Sen asked him a few questions, and each time he received no response. Han Sen would have thought the man was dead if not for his life force. "My name is Han Senator, what is yours?" When Han Sen said that, the man suddenly moved. He put a finger in front of his lips, like a gesture to indicate he should be quiet. The man did not appear hostile, and that brought Han Sen much relief. He stopped talking and just watched the man. The man continued standing there for a whole hour, without saying as much as a single word. He looked more like a statue than a living being. Is he practicing? Maybe? But it doesn't look like it. Han Sen felt very confused, but also very curious. He sat on a chair to watch the man and see what he'd do. But 10 hours went by, and still, the man did not budge. "Friend, can we talk?" Han Sen could not wait any longer. "SSH." The man gestured for silence again.
Han Sen's heart sank.
He hadn't a clue what he was doing. He couldn't ask anything, as the man kept hushing him. Han Sen looked around the room and noticed that it was all rustic, just like the rest of the house. Han Sen looked at a table and found something that was actually not made of wood. There was paper, alongside a stack of books. "Friend, can I check this out?" Han Sen walked before the table and glanced over the books. There was a diary with many words scrawled on it. But Han Sen didn't begin reading immediately. He still wanted to ask the man for permission. The man looked very nervous, and he performed the SSH gesture again. "If you don't object, then I'll assume you are agreeing." Han Sen went ahead to read the contents of the diary. Quickly, Han Sen noticed he was able to read the text contained within the diary. It was written in the ancient language of humans, a text often used by the crystallizers. There were, however, a variety of symbols not even he could understand. All in all, he didn't understand everything together. There were some formulas jotted down. Han Sen wasn't very good at science. He had learned a bit in school, but he had forgotten most of that by now. But Han Sen was still able to tell he had never seen these formulas before. They were extremely complicated. Judging from the content of the book, the man had been trying to calculate something. Han Sen flicked through the pages of the book, and the man showed no reaction. As long as Han Sen made no noise, the man didn't mind his presence there. That's how it seemed, leastways. When the man didn't object to Han Sen's behavior, it made Han Sen feel safe enough to relax a little. So, he continued reading the diary. It must have been a draft of sorts. There were many random things jotted down. However, there were enough words and symbols that Han Sen did not understand to make the book unintelligible. Han Sen put the diary down and took a gander at the other books. They all seemed to concern themselves with science. There were ones based on quantum theory. Han Sen knew he would not understand those books. Since the books were in messy disarray, Han Sen decided to tidy them up. By doing that, he also hoped to find a book he might enjoy. And soon after, his breath caught. He saw a book titled The Story of Genes. This was what Han Sen had retrieved from the main control room of the crystallizers. Ever since that time, he hadn't found a single thing associated with the book. Not even Stay Up Late knew where the story of genes came from. He read it, shook his head, and thought it must be a prank. No one could use the story of genes, or even practice it. It was not something any creature could learn. Han Sen had never expected that he would find another copy in a place like this. Perhaps it is just a coincidence. Maybe the title is the same, but it's not actually the same book. Han Sen tried to regather the composure of his thoughts, and then flipped the book open. When he read the first line, he knew he had not been mistaken. This was indeed another copy of the story of Jeans. It was exactly the same. Han Sen kept reading the content, and word for word, it was the same. Aside from the standard content, there were actually many notes explaining things. But they weren't related to how you'd actually practice with the text. The notes were of a scientific nature. Han Sen read it all seriously, right up until he reached the end. The content, from back to front, was the same as his own The Story of Jeans. There was, however, an additional page. That page had nothing to do with how to practice the work, though. It was a summary. The summary used an extensive vocabulary. Han Sen did not understand what was written until he reached the final line. It said the test had failed. There was something else he understood, too. Cannot figure out the requirements for practice. The story of Jean's theory does not make sense. Can I not create a god? Is this guy the creator of the story of Jeans? Han Sen looked back at the man strangely. The man was dressed in ordinary garments, but they were in tatters. He stood motionless, like a mannequin. He was focused, as if he was trying to hear something. Han Sen had something he wished to ask, but he knew that if he tried to ask anything, the man would simply tell him to be quiet. Han Sen kept sorting through the books on the table. There were books on many different subjects, from genes to quantum theory. Overall, Han Sen could not understand much. After Han Sen tidied up the books, he decided to sit and observe the man. The man really wasn't moving, and he was unsure how long the man could do this. Han Sen had almost fallen asleep when the man finally moved. He walked gently towards the table, looked down at Han Sen, and said, "Who are you? Why have you come here?" "I am Han Senator. What's your name?"
Han Sen asket happilu.
"Run, or it will be too late for you to escape." The man looked annoyed. What does that mean? Han Sen felt a chill, and he thought the man might try to fight him. You don't know that you are on a spirit's body. If it moves, it will travel through space, the man explained. You mean the mountain is a creature? Han Sen asked with shock. What is so weird about that? There is plenty of life in this world, the man said. It's a mountain. How can a mountain have life? There are other creatures like birds and worms on this mountain, Han Sen said. The man looked at him with disdain. You have so many bacteria and parasites on you. Does the fact that they have life mean that you do not? But I am a living thing. The mountain is just a rock, Han Sen said. Who said rocks cannot possess life? It's like a piece of meat. You wouldn't say it is living, but it is a part of life, the man said. It's not like that. If the rock is like flesh, then why are we able to create minds? And why does the life of rock not resist? Like us. If someone was digging into our flesh, we'd want to kill whoever was assaulting us, Han Sen asked. The man laughed. It's because we are too fast. Too fast? Han Sen froze, unsure of what he meant. The man explained. The rock lives longer than we do. 1 billion years might only be a moment for them. Even if we do dig into its body, the rock might not even have the time to notice our presence. It cannot see what we do. Han Sen was frozen. He had never thought of things this way before. The man looked at Han Sr. You said we would kill anyone who harms, yes? But things aren't like that. What if we grow a sickness like cancer? It destroys our bodies, but often, we can't root out the thing that is killing us. When these things harm your body, you cannot do anything. Just like the rock is unable to do things about us. This is just a simple way for me to explain these things. The truth of such matters is far more complicated. If you're interested in learning more, read this. You will understand far better. The man gave Han Sen a book. My scientific background is pretty bad. I might not understand. Han Sen felt awful saying this. The man said, scientific research is all about simplifying the complicated things. You can let those other fools worry about science itself. This is a geno art I created through the theory of rock creatures. Ordinary crystallizers can practice it. Han Sen wished to say something, but the man looked outside and spoke again. He said, you should leave now. The spirit is going to move. Unless you want to travel far away with me, that is. Han Sen started running out of the lodge. The man might be lying, but it was better to run than risking everything by remaining. If Han Sen was transported to another star system, that'd be pretty bad. When he made it some distance away, Han Sen turned around to face the man and ask, "What is your name?" "Left Crazy," the man answered. Han Sen wished to ask something more, but he felt the mountain begin to shake. Without hesitation, he said goodbye and hastily departed the mountain. Boom! With the speed of his rabbit shoes aiding his flight, Han Sen was able to just about get off the mountain before hearing that deafening sound. The mountains all around were vibrating like mad, and when Han Sen turned back around to face where the mountain had been, he saw nothing. It was as if the mountain did not exist. How did that mountain move so quickly? I thought the man said that rocks were slow. Cold sweat dripped off Han Sen's forehead. It was fortunate he had moved as fast as he had. If he hadn't, he'd have been long gone. Han Sen took a gander at the book he had been given by Left Crazy. There was no name, and it had all been written by hand. Petrify? That sounds so lame. It sounds like a skill that can make your skin as hard as stone, Han Sen thought, as he started to read the text. But as he read, his expression turned to surprise. The skill was called Petrify, and while the name was lame, the contents were impressive. It was a complete Geno art. From commoner to baron, from viscount to king, all could practice and become proficient with it. It had its own power. Practicing Petrify did not make your body harder, though. It would just make your body closer to that of the rocky creatures. Crystallizers were like herms, so they could become like rocks completely. The higher your petrification was, the closer to the life of a rock you'd attune. You wouldn't become completely the same as a rock. You'd only adopt some of their attributes. Petrify made humans and crystallizers petrified. It gave them the life of a rock. Petrify couldn't make someone impervious to death, but time had more difficulty leaving its marks on petrified bodies. Thousands of years result in many humans and crystallizers dying, but to a rock, it was only a moment. It did not affect them. Han Sen examined the requirements for bringing Petrify up to king class, if that was what he chose to do. At that point, he would have a life that was very similar to a rock's. And with a body like that, many millions of years could come and go without affecting him. There was one significant flaw to Petrify, though. When you used it, your body really would turn to stone. You'd be unable to move because of it. And your mind would still be there, active too. The more you practiced the skill, the closer to the life of a rock you would get. It sounds really cool, but it seems fairly useless. You'd only turn into a rock, and rocks aren't hard enough to provide great protection. And you can't move either. Why would that guy bother creating this skill? Han Sen thought to himself. After a while, Han Sen was able to come up with a useful application for it. If I can practice while petrified, then time would be of no issue for me. I could just keep practicing without eating or drinking. In that case, Petrify might be really useful. He planned to learn it, thinking it might come in handy. Petrify was a Geno art that allowed for the swapping of genes. It did not make your body better. You still needed a strength like the story of Gene as a basis. Han Sen thought it was a crystallizer Geno art, so he used the story of genes to practice with it. Han Sen found a safe cave to take refuge in, where he could practice Petrify. It was easier to learn than he expected. After casting it once, his skin started to feel rocky. Already, Han Sen could tell that he had learned the first tier of Petrify. That was much easier than I thought it'd be. Han Sen then moved on to try the second tier. It was a Baron class Petrify. Han Sen finished Baron Petrify easily, too. He kept on going, and he realized that Petrify really was exceptionally easy to learn. He only spent 2 days practicing with it to get it all the way up to King class. After reaching King class, he noticed Left Crazy had not written anything more. That was likely due to the fact he had yet to reach that level. He guessed that after the King level, you could actually become petrified. Without a skill that would teach him how to proceed, Han Sen decided to try other things. If he became a rock and was unable to return to a human form, then his life would be over. Why is it like that? According to Left Crazy, you had to reach a certain level before practicing such a skill. So, why did nothing stop him from reaching King class? Is it because of the story of genes? Han Sen guessed a number of things, but he wasn't sure enough to put stock in anything. Han Sen tried using his petrify, and he learned other Geno arts could not be practiced as long as it was in use. That was because petrify made a big change to the body. Geno arts for the human body were useless. Only the story of genes could run while he was in a petrified state. This Geno art is so weird. Although it can take you to a very high level, its usefulness is practically non-existent. Losing interest in petrify, Han Sen decided to return to practicing with the Dongxian Sutra. Han Sen remained in the mountains for an entire month. He fought and practiced with his Dongxian Sutra a great amount. Dongxian Sutra was on the precipice of breaking through, but it had yet to do so. There were 10 days left before the red mist spring erupted. After realizing this, Han Sen decided it was time to leave the mountains and head to the spring. His spell Geno armament required this spring, so it could become a Viscount. He couldn't afford to miss this opportunity. Before long, Han Sen was right outside Red Mist Valley. There were hordes of Xenogeneics wandering around, and it was clear they had all come there for the Red Mist Spring as well. They all hung outside the valley. None of them had entered the mist yet. They were waiting for the spring to erupt. Han Sen looked around. The Xenogeneics there were Baron or Viscount. There were no higher-level sorts. Isha told Han Sen that the Red Mist Spring only worked for Viscounts. It would be ineffective on those of a higher level, so there was no point in high-class Xenogeneics coming. Han Sen found a hidden place in Red Mist Valley. He was going to wait for the spring to burst. He also hunted down many of the Viscount creatures that were around in order to collect their materials and genes. There were 3 or 4 days left now, according to the schedule Isha had proposed. And over the course of those next few days, more and more creatures gathered. Han Sen guessed that there had to be around 10,000 in total, with most of them being Viscount. It was fortunate that no creature of a higher tier had come. If they had, Han Sen could not have guaranteed that he would be the one to benefit from the spring. Perhaps because they were all too greedy in their desire for the spring, many of the creatures fought against each other. He had never seen so much conflict before. As Han Sen was watching those Xenogeneics fighting outside the valley, he eventually caught sight of a few Xenogeneics retreating. They abandoned their position. It seemed as if something strong was coming. It can't be a higher-class Xenogeneic, can it? Han Sen was shocked. He looked that way, but there were too many Xenogeneics there. Many were 2 meters tall, and they obscured Han Sen's vision. He couldn't see whatever was coming. Han Sen looked around and stayed close to the wall. He wanted to scale it and get a better look. There was a dark green centipede. Each part of its body gleamed with jewel-like eyes as it skittered across the earth. Every Xenogeneic in its path backed off as soon as they saw it. None dared to stay within 20 meters of the creature. The Xenogeneic was 10 meters long, but it wasn't tall. Its body was only half a meter off the ground. That was why Han Sen had such difficulty trying to spot it. Han Sen watched it for quite some time, and he didn't think it was all that high level. It should have been no better than a Viscount, so it was weird to see the fear with which so many Xenogeneics regarded it. Quickly, the centipede Xenogeneic reached the entrance of the valley. It was different from the other Xenogeneics, and it crawled right into the valley. Han Sen was shocked. Isha said that the Red Mist Spring was good for Xenogeneics. It could speed up their evolution, but the red mist itself was harmful by comparison. Until the spring was ready, the mist remained there. So, it was most wise to avoid the mist until then. But the centipede climbed straight into the valley, and it did so without getting harmed by the mist.
No.
I have got to find that centipede. If it is going towards the spring, it might be able to swallow it the moment it opens up. I'll lose my own opportunity.
Han Sen frov ned.
He hadn't thought the centipede was going to climb down into the valley, and now that it was in there, it would be extremely difficult to find the creature. You couldn't even see your own hand in front of you. That mist was so thick. Trying to find the centipede would be difficult. I'll have to try. Luckily, it is just a Viscount Xenogeneic. It cannot be that large of a threat. Han Sen donned his Marquis armor and the rabbit shoes. He flew past the heads of the Xenogeneics and headed straight into the valley. Just like before, the mist stifled Han Sen's senses. It was as if he was deaf and blind. Han Sen searched through the mist, hoping to find the centipede Xenogeneic. The valley was massive, and there were still a few days to go before the spring was supposed to erupt. Han Sen thought he'd be able to find the centipede. Han Sen walked more quickly through the mist, but he did not dare go too fast. If he ran into a rock wall and injured himself, he'd become a joke. Due to him being unable to see, though, he tried hugging the walls as he went. Once he had canvassed the area that way, he maintained a steady distance from the wall and went along them again. After searching the place like a neatly fitted carpet, he hadn't caught sight of the centipede. 8 hours had elapsed by now. That xenogeneic was rather large. It shouldn't be too difficult to find. Why am I so unlucky? Han Sen felt depressed. Han Sen walked into the deepest recesses of the valley, and when he reached the far wall, he wished to turn back. But that wall felt different from the others. Han Sen kept running his hands over it, and eventually, he realized there was a space next to it. It was a cave. Han Sen thought he was adequately protected with the Marquis's armor and the rabbit shoes, so he entered the cave. After entering, Han Sen's eyes gleamed brightly. The red mist was gone, and he could see all that resided in the cave. The red mist was like a fire burning behind him. It lit up the cave. The cave did not have any of the mist inside, though. All of Han Sen's senses had returned. Han Sen looked deeper into the cave, and when he did, something made him quite happy. The giant centipede was inside there. Does the spring reside in this cave? No way. Isha said the spring would have a darker mist. How can there be none at all? Han Sen thought. He didn't stop moving, though, and he planned to get rid of the centipede, just in case. It looked like that xenogeneic was a very sensitive creature, though. It detected Han Sen's presence quickly, and so it turned around and used its jewel-like eyes to look at him. Boom! As this occurred, the jewel-like eyes shone with a green light. The green light was too bright, especially for a cave that was so small. It blinded the entire cave with that channel of light, prompting Han Sen to run forward. It's lucky I have this Marquis's armor. A light like this looks Viscount level at the lowest, Han Sen thought to himself. He drew his ghost teeth knife, and with his ice powers and blood, he cut towards the light. Ghost teeth knife sliced through the green light. The light had a tangible presence, and it filled up the entire area. When it landed on Han Sen, he himself turned green. Han Sen then realized he could no longer move. It was as if he had been stopped by a strange power. He was stuck in the same position, unable to move. Crap, there is something wrong with that light. Han Sen was shocked. He hastily used his power, trying to break through the light that was snaring him. He wanted his freedom back. Han Sen fired up Jade Skin, the Blood Pulse Sutra, the Dongshin Sutra, and the Story of Genes, but still, he was unable to escape the green light. The centipede-like xenogeneic, with its jewel-like eyes focused on Han Sen, continued to pound him with green light.